the heavy double doors of the Grand Library groaned as Vladimir Mondragon pushed them open. His gloved fingers curled tightly around the cold brass handles, carved with sigils of forgotten scholars. He leaned forward with controlled force, his shoulder muscles flexing beneath his cloak as the weight of the doors resisted him, ancient hinges protesting in a guttural moan. The golden trim of the double panels trembled slightly as he pushed harder. Boots braced, heels scraping gently over the crystal floor until the doors creaked open wide enough to let him in. Dust particles danced like ghosts in the shafts of golden light piercing through the towering stained glass windows. As he stepped over the threshold, the air shifted, thin, ancient, and cold. The light filtered through mosaic panes of violet, crimson, and sapphire, slicing across the floor in fractured rays. Each beam revealed particles suspended in stillness, shimmering as they spiraled like tiny spirits stirred awake by his arrival. He paused a moment, letting the silence enclose him like a tomb. Silence reigned, broken only by the soft echo of his leather boots tapping against the crystal floor. His every step was methodical, slow, heels clicking first, followed by the gentle press of soles. The sound echoed upward into the vast cathedral ceiling, where gilded arches cradled runes and constellations etched in faded silver. With each step, the weight of his thoughts pressed down harder, matching the rhythm of his gait. He was desperate, burning, for power, for her. Inside his chest, his heartbeat pounded like war drums muffled by silk. His breaths came shallow, as though the very air here was too thin to satisfy the fire blooming in his lungs. Shanti. He whispered her name, each syllable escaping his mouth like a sigh too heavy to hold. It drifted into the air and lingered, aching, bitter, sweet. Her name a poison and a cure all at once. As it left his lips, it twisted in his mind, her smile, her voice, the way she once looked at him, even if just for a heartbeat. The memory pierced him like glass beneath skin, beautiful and unbearable. The Grand Library was ancient, older even than Volantis Noctum itself. He let his eyes sweep across the towering columns, their surfaces etched with time-worn glyphs and crawling ivy that pulsed faintly with dormant magic. Marble busts of long-dead philosophers loomed from alcoves above, their hollow eyes judging, whispering, waiting. Within its endless aisles slumbered forbidden knowledge, scrolls about forgotten gods, tomes etched with blood rituals, grimoires sealed by magic so dark it could rip a soul apart. His fingers flexed at his sides, a slow, curling motion as if itching to touch them, those secrets. He passed long stone tables layered with parchment and broken candle stubs, the air pungent with wax, dust, and something older, like thunderclouds long gone. He drifted through the shadowed corridors, fingers grazing the spines of dust-laden volumes. He moved deliberately, each step precise. His right hand rose, slow and deliberate, and his fingertips, bare beneath his left glove, traced the ridges of cracked leather bindings. The dust clung to his skin, fine and gray. Some volumes disintegrated at the edges beneath his touch, flakes flurrying down like ash. I need a way, he thought fiercely. A way to tear her from Vasper's arms. A way to stand against my brother. His teeth clenched as the image of them, together, burned behind his eyes. His jaw tightened, lips curling into something between grief and rage. He blinked rapidly, breath held, as if the thought itself might suffocate him. He was losing himself to the madness of longing. The library around him blurred for a moment, as though the room itself bent to his state of mind. He ran a hand down his face, his palm rough against the days-old stubble on his jaw. His vision cleared, but the ache remained, deep and raw. Shanti haunted his every waking thought, yet he could find no sliver of hope, no path to challenge his brother. Except perhaps here, buried beneath centuries of silence and spellcraft. He moved again, turning down another aisle. His shoulders brushed bookshelves carved from obsidian and inlaid with violet veins of moonstone. With a sweep of his arm, he cleared a table, sending a cascade of books tumbling to the floor with hollow thuds. There had to be magic strong enough to tip the balance. something like what Vasper and Leica possessed. He dropped to one knee beside a toppled stack, both hands trembling slightly now as he tore open a dusty grimoire. Its pages brittle, text inked in blood-red glyphs. He flipped through them violently, each page a blur. Nothing. He couldn't face Vasper as he was. Vasper, the favored son. The warrior king. The destined ruler. His hand clenched the edge of the book so hard it cracked. The jagged edge bit into his palm. He didn't flinch. The pain felt good. Real. Ambition wasn't enough. He needed more. He needed the impossible. He stood, quick and sharp, cloak fanning behind him like wings. His breath came faster now. His eyes roved with wild hunger, scanning every shelf, every nook, every cursed corner of this place. Hours bled into hours. Piles of books now littered the floor. None held the answer he sought. Sweat gleamed along his temples. His hair had come loose from its tie, strands clinging to his cheeks. His voice rasped from muttered spells and curses. A candle on the table flickered violently, guttering out as if afraid of him. Until he stopped mid-step. Muscles locked. A faint vibration brushed across his skin, barely a breath. A faint vibration in the air halted him mid-step. He slowly turned his head. There, at the farthest corner, partially obscured behind a tapestry older than any living memory, at the farthest edge of the library, half hidden behind a moth-eaten tapestry bearing the sigils of the Mondragon ancestors, something caught his eye. The sigils were faded, but familiar. Dragons coiled around flame, the family crest tangled in vines. The cloth twitched, ever so slightly, as if stirred by breath unseen. Beneath its hem, something glinted. An iron-bound chest, old and forgotten, buried beneath a landslide of crumbling scrolls and layered dust. He crossed the room slowly, cautiously, each step silent now, instinctively reverent. His boots barely kissed the floor. He crouched low, fingers sifting through parchment and grime. The iron was cold beneath his palms, marked with runes dulled by age. Compelled by an unseen force, he knelt and pried the chest open. The latch resisted at first, encrusted with age. He wedged his fingers beneath the edge, flexed his forearms, and wrenched it upward. The creak was long and bone-deep. Inside lay a single object, a blackened leather book, its cover etched with glowing runes that pulsed softly in the dim light. The runes shimmered like embers under skin. He reached out slowly, hand hovering just above the surface before letting his fingertips settle onto it. The warmth shocked him. Soft, living. The chronicle of reclaimed souls. The words weren't written on the cover. He knew them. They spoke themselves into his mind. His heart thundered. A single, massive thump. Then another. Each beat echoing in his ears louder than footsteps, louder than memory. Carefully, reverently, he opened it. Fingers trembling. He lifted the cover inch by inch. The leather creaked like breathing. The book unfolded like it had waited only for him. And the moment he did, a surge of cold air swept through the library, extinguishing half the torches. The wind crashed against him, snapping his cloak back, lifting the edges of loose scrolls into the air like startled birds. The torches hissed and dimmed, plunging entire corridors into darkness. The book reeked of ozone and ancient storms. He inhaled sharply, nose wrinkling. The scent was sharp, electric, like lightning striking open earth. The pages were brittle and inked in a language older than the royal bloodline, but somehow he understood. Each symbol danced, unraveling before his eyes, reforming in his mind as if he were born knowing them. The words bypassed his eyes and carved themselves into his mind. They burned pathways in his thoughts, seared themselves into memory. Those felled by the lightning bough may yet find life anew. If soul and flesh find common desire, a binding may occur. The relic of the sky ice shall anchor the soul, forging immortality through the willing vessel. He mouthed the words slowly, reverently. Lightning bough. Sky ice. Common desire. Vladimir staggered back, breath ragged. He stepped backward, almost tripping over an upturned tome, one hand flying to brace against a column. His chest rose and fell in shudders. Jake Valerian. Killed by Alexander's lightning. Still lingering. Still seeking. His thoughts raced. Threads wove together with brutal clarity. If Vladimir could become the vessel. If he and Jake were driven by the same fire, the same love for Shanti. Then together, they might rise greater than Vasper ever could. A slow, dangerous smile curved Vladimir's lips. His hand smoothed over the cover of the book. Possessive. A lover's caress. Destiny had placed a weapon in his hands. He lifted the book into the crook of his arm, wrapping it tightly against his side. All he needed now was the sky ice, and the courage to offer his soul to a dead guardian. He closed the book, cradling it like a newborn secret, and melted into the shadows of the Grand Library. The first threads of fate now tightening around Shanta's life. Unbeknownst to Vladimir, she had seen everything. Laika stood shrouded in shadows, hidden behind one of the colossal stone pillars that flanked the ancient library like silent sentinels. Her golden eyes, sharp as a predator's in the dark, never wavered, locked on Vladimir's retreating back. Each breath she drew was quiet, measured, like a huntress stalking a beast. "What are you doing here?" she whispered, voice barely audible beneath the weighty silence. "You never cared for this place." Not once. The moment his silhouette vanished beyond the arched threshold, she stepped forward, heels clicking softly against crystals, her stride cautious but deliberate. Her gaze swept across the wreckage he had left behind. A chaos of ancient tomes strewn across the floor like fallen soldiers. Spines torn. Delicate pages fluttering in a phantom breeze that smelled of dust, leather, and old magic. One book had fallen open near her feet, its brittle parchment folded beneath cracked leather. She bent slowly, gracefully, and picked it up with gloved fingers, brushing dust from its cover. The title was written in a forgotten tongue, barely visible beneath centuries of wear. She sighed sharply through her nose, the sound heavy with contempt. Such carelessness, she muttered, setting the book down on a nearby table with reverent precision. "What the hell are you looking for, Vladimir?" Tearing through centuries of wisdom like some drunken savage. A flick of her wrist summoned two palace attendants from the hallway. They appeared without question, their heads bowed low. "Clean this mess," she commanded curtly, her tones slicing through the air like ice. "And if I find one more sacred tome treated like firewood, there will be punishments." She didn't wait for acknowledgement. She turned on her heel, her cloak of silver-gray velvet swirling behind her like a winter storm. Her boots struck each marble step with silent fury as she ascended, her mind a storm of questions she couldn't shake. By the time she reached the uppermost wing, night had settled over Volantis Noctum like a veil of secrets. Her hand lingered on the frost-forged door handle as she entered her chambers, once the sacred sanctuary of Queen Verandra of House Elmira. Her mother, a ruler as fierce as winter and twice as merciless. The suite had remained untouched since her mother's mysterious passing. Not a soul had dared enter, until Laika did. Now, it belonged to her. The chamber exhaled elegance with every breath, walls sculpted from pale crystal that cut even the faintest light and fractured it into dancing shards across the room. The ceiling above was a celestial mural, constellations painted in rich silver and starlight ink. Enchanted curtains shimmered with mood and hour, blushing violet at twilight, bone white by midnight. The hearth burned with silver flame, neither hot nor cold, but ethereal. On the far end, near a column of ice stone, her mother's mirror still stood, tall, haunting, carved from glacier crystals. It was said to show more than just the reflection of one's flesh, but echoes of the soul, the true longing beneath the surface. Laika stood before it now, posture regal, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her reflection stared back, golden eyes hard as polished topaz, lips pressed into a thin line. Vladimir. She spoke the name like a challenge, her voice quiet but edged in steel. What are you trying to awaken? For a breath, the room held still. The flames in the hearth seemed to pause, the constellations above her frozen in their orbit. She stared deeper into the mirror, waiting, wondering. What frightened her more? The answers he might uncover? Or the darkness he might become to find them? And as the silver flame flickered, as the mirror's depths shimmered like disturbed water, Laika saw something. Just for a moment. A shadow behind her own. Something ancient. Something hungry. She didn't flinch, but her fingers slowly tightened around the folds of her robe. She would not be caught off guard again. Not by Vladimir. Not by the past. Not by whatever whispered beneath the ice. The study breathed shadows, long, shifting tendrils that clung to every corner like silent, watching specters. The thick velvet curtains, maroons so dark they bled into black, hung heavy from ceiling to floor. They swayed faintly, barely, with the pressure of silence, sealing the chamber like a tomb. Outside light dared not enter. The world beyond had been smothered entirely. Only two sources of light survived within the darkness. First, the fireplace. Its flame was weak, its heart reduced to sullen embers that blinked and snapped in protest. Flickers of flame danced like dying spirits, clawing at the grate, casting erratic shadows along the stone walls. Each glow was a breath, a heartbeat, struggling to persist. Second, the sky ice. A shard no longer than a man's forearms hovered an inch above the center of the ancient oakwood table. Its edges were raw, jagged, as if chiseled from the marrow of a glacier god. It glowed with a pale, spectral light, blue as deepest ocean and just as unfathomable. It pulsed slowly, rhythmic, measured, like a heartbeat, ancient and buried, yet alive. The air around it thrummed, subtly, but steadily. Not a vibration of sound, but of pressure, of force. Not a single noise disturbed the room. Not even the whisper of dust dared settle. Vladimir Mondragon stood still. He did not twitch. He did not sway. Every muscle was locked into place, each tendon taut beneath layers of black wool and leather. The long coat he wore settled against his frame like armor, its collar stiff, its seams crisp, its presence regal and grave. His boots, polished obsidian, rooted him to the cold floor like carved obsidian pillars. He might as well have been a statue. But the cold around him betrayed the truth. It was not natural. Despite the glowing hearth, the temperature dropped with each beat of the sky ice. Frost crept subtly across the iron fixtures, on the candle holders, across the bookshelf hinges, on the table legs. His breath emerged in slow, spiraling ribbons, curling upward and dissolving against the still air. But Vladimir did not shiver. Not outwardly. Yet the silence screamed within him, louder than wind, louder than war. Before him lay the chronicle of reclaimed souls. It did not simply sit upon the table. It loomed. Its pages were thick, aged to a yellowed brown, the edges curled and torn by time and handling. Each parchment bled ink, runic symbols written in no mortal hand. The runes didn't stay still. They moved, shifted like insects beneath translucent skin. Under the cold light of the sky ice, they writhed. Alive, furious, hungry. The chronicle throbbed as if it breathed. Its words twisted the light, devoured it. And still, Vladimir's eyes were locked to a single passage, the same one he had read more than 100 times. But this time, it struck him like a blade between the ribs. The soul adrift may find anchor once more through blood and relic. Blood of the dragon, keeper of old power, relic of the fallen, mark of the soul's last breath. His irises, steel gray laced with the faintest ring of violet, quivered. His pupils narrowed. A tremor touched his right hand. Fingers curled. He saw it. Felt it. The tremble. No. Vladimir's jaw clenched. A flex of muscle. His hand curled into a fist and crushed the shaking out of existence, pushing his nails into the center of his palm until red blossomed. Vladimir Mondragon does not tremble. But the truth was written in fire. The chronicle called for sacrifice. And not just any dragon. His dragon. The bond was not forged by collar or chain. It was not domination. It was love. Threaded from soul to soul, woven through years of trust and fire and shared silence. A bond born in his childhood. In the darkness where no human hands reached to comfort him. His dragon had always been there. Vera. The name slipped from his mouth before he could cage it. Barely audible. A whisper. A memory. A sin. Vera. The silence shattered like crystal glass. The syllables hit the air like a spell. Bitter and sweet. The taste burned his tongue. Ash and honey. Vera. The she-dragon with obsidian scales that shimmered violet in moonlight. Vera, who curled herself around his trembling boyhood form on freezing nights. Vera, whose roar shattered entire cliffsides when he was threatened. Vera, whose wings wrapped him like sanctuaries. Like cathedrals. When the world collapsed. Her eyes, the color of molten gold, had been the only warmth he remembered from those broken years. And now, he would kill her. Because the chronicle didn't demand obedience. It demanded love. Real love. The kind that gouged holes in the soul when taken. The kind that left the world lesser. His knees gave way beneath him. With a choked grunt, he caught himself. His palms slamming onto the oak table's surface. Splinters biting into skin. He doubled over, ribs aching, and drew ragged breaths that scalded his throat. Sweat, despite the cold, formed at the base of his spine, soaking into the silk lining of his coat. Could he truly? His head jerked to the side. There, just inches from the sky ice, sat an object sealed in a crystal casing. Small, frayed, singed around the edges. Its leather was blackened, charred by lightning. Edges curled from fire. A wristband. Jake Valerian's. The last thing he wore before Alexander's lightning arrow erased him from the world. Vladimir stared. His pupils dilated. That wristband hadn't been there when he excavated the shard from the dragon's graveyard. It had appeared after. Placed by unseen hands. A token. A curse. A gift from the void. From Jake. Or fate. The sky ice responded. Its glow surged, stronger, sharper. The pulses accelerated. Each throb of light now a demand. A cry. It was hungry. It waited. Outside, the wind screamed. It clawed at the stained glass windows with long, invisible fingers. The panes rattled in their casings. Desperate. As if the storm sought to force its way in and witness the sacrifice to come. Vladimir dragged a shaking hand through his damp hair. Black strands stuck to his forehead, clinging like leeches. His mind reeled, spiraling into the past. Vera, in his arms. Wings no bigger than bedsheets. Eyes blinking trust. Vera, leaping into skies. Her silhouette against the dying sun. Vera, intercepting an assassin's blade with her ribs. Vera, nudging his hands on nights he sobbed like a child. Offering warmth without question. She had never asked for anything. And now he would end her. There has to be another way. He whispered. His voice fractured. A splinter of something once human. The sky ice throbbed. Harder. Colder. And from the edges of the void, a voice emerged. Soft as silk. Dark as a coffin. We are so close, Vladimir. Jake's voice. Smooth. Seductive. Poison dressed in velvet. One sacrifice. And we will be unstoppable. Vladimir reeled back, bile rising into his throat. He turned away. Gagged. His body convulsed. But nothing came up. Just breath. Just guilt. Just despair. Because he knew. The chronicle was clear. If the vessel is weak, if Vladimir faltered, Jake's soul would dominate. Take over. He would be lost. Consumed. Jake would wear his skin like a second flesh. What if I disappear? What if Jake takes everything? But another voice surged up louder. Harsher. His own voice. What if Vasper wins again? What if Shante never even looks at me? That thought struck deep. Colder than sky ice. Sharper than any blade. His breath caught in his chest, solid. Frozen. He turned to the wall. Leaned his forehead against its stone surface. It was freezing, numb against his burning skin. His shoulders heaved once. Once. Then silence. Long minutes passed. Agonizing minutes. Each one carved something from him. His grief, his decency, his soul. When he turned again, it was slow. Measured. Like the earth rotating. Like death approaching. He reached for the chronicle. Fingers wrapped it with reverence and hatred both. Next, he picked up the crystal casing. The wristband caught the firelight, flickering like a dying star. And then, he reached for the sky ice. Flesh met frost. The shard burned as it entered his grasp. It seared into him, branding him. Invisible runes sank beneath his skin like hooks. Like parasites. But he did not let go. He did not flinch. Tomorrow night, under the blood moon, Vladimir Mondragon would bring Vera to the inner sanctum. He would lead her. He would lie to her. He would kill her. He would spill her blood with trembling hands. Trade her soul for a ghost. And ignite the return of Jake Valerian. He would burn what remained of himself. For a woman who would never love him. For Shanti. Even if it meant surrendering his soul to the abyss. Even if it meant becoming something else. Even if it meant damnation. Forever. The altar jutted from the earth like a wound. Carved from ancient obsidian. Blacker than a moonless void. Streaked with veins of deep crimson that pulsed faintly. As if old blood still wept through the stone. It stood at the heart of the sanctum. A place older than sin. Long forsaken by the royal priests of Volantis Noctum. And for good reason. Only those who dared to fracture the spine of destiny came here. Only the damned. Vladimir Mondragon stood at its edge, cloaked in shadow and dread. The shard of sky ice flickered in his palm like a dying star poised to erupt. Around his other wrist, the broken leather band of Jake Valerian clung tight. Burned, brittle, stained with the ash of his death. Digging into his flesh like guilt, like penance. Like a promise never meant to be kept. Beside him knelt Vera. His Vera. The last of the obsidian bloodline. The dragon who had guarded his broken heart when the world turned to ice. She rested with wings folded close. Her colossal form coiled in solemn grace. Her molten gold eyes gazed up at him, deep, knowing, loyal beyond all reason. She blinked slowly, patiently. A warm breath curled from her nostrils, steady as her trust. Even here. Even now. Even as death whispered from the bones of this forsaken tomb. Vladimir's throat tightened. His lips parted, but the words tore as they came. "Forgive me," he rasped. Voice scraped raw with pain. Vera answered with a low, rumbling purr. She nuzzled his shoulder gently. Her scales, warm and faintly glowing with that sacred dragon magic, brushed against his skin like a memory. She knew. Perhaps she had always known. And still, she stayed. Still, she loved him. The Chronicle's invocation screamed through his skull like a brand. Blood of loyalty. Heart of the sky. Breath of death. Thus shall soul and flesh entwine. His hands trembled. He reached for the ceremonial dagger, forged of fallen star metal, obsidian dark and razor thin, its edge singing with a note so high it made his teeth ache. He froze. He couldn't. But Shanti. Her face exploded behind his eyes. Not his memory. Jake's. Her laughter. Her smile. Her flushed skin under moonlight. Her breathless moans. Trembling with a devotion Vladimir never earned. A reverence Jake never understood. Flash. Her body arching beneath him. Her voice a shivering melody of need. Jake's hands, gentle, worshipful, touched her like sacred fire. He never took her. Never crossed that final line. Because of the prophecy. But Vladimir felt it now. Every heartbeat, every touch. Every surrender. Her thighs clenched around him. Her breath caught on his name. Not his name. Jake. The dagger dropped from his fingers, striking the obsidian with a crack like thunder. He stumbled backward. Heat flaring down his spine. Burning. His cock throbbed violently beneath his robes. His breath came ragged. Possessed by something not his own. The need, feral, desperate, was laced with the scent of her. The memory of her fingernails raking down a back that wasn't his. He slammed his fists against the altar, howling. No. These memories. They're not mine. But they were now. And they would never leave. Vera whined, soft and broken. As though she felt the fracture inside him spreading. Tears streamed down his face. Forgive me. His voice shattered. Forgive me, Vera. Forgive me, Shanti. He bent down. Gripped the dagger with both hands, knuckles pale. And with one swift, tormented arc, he drove the blade into Vera's chest. The sound she made. It was not a roar. Not a scream. It was a soul-breaking. The sanctum erupted. Stained glass exploded in faraway towers. Thunder cracked beneath the foundations. Black ichor surged from her chest, cascading over the altar like rivers of morning. The sky ice burst into blue flame. The wristband seared. His skin blistered beneath it. The ground quaked. Reality split. Vera convulsed once. Then again. Then. Stillness. Her golden eyes dimmed. Her wings folded. Gone. Gone. Forever. Then came the flood. Power surged into Vladimir. Blinding, searing, divine. The sky ice speared through his chest like a stake of god fire. Bones cracked. His scream echoed to the edges of creation. Runes scorched across his flesh, glowing with light no mortal was meant to hold. And then, Jake. His soul slammed into Vladimir's like a tidal wave. Memories. Lust. Grief. Rage. Need. Love. A storm of her. Vladimir collapsed. Blood on his lips. Then he rose. Slow. Violent. Reborn. A blur. One moment he was at the altar. The next, 20 feet away. Teleportation. Strength surged in his limbs. The air rippled around him. He could feel wings, phantom and immense, tugging at his spine, aching to be freed. A god in mortal skin. But in the depths of his mind, a voice. Mocking. Silken. Dark. Jake. Our body now. Ours to share. Or conquer. And Vladimir knew. Every flicker of lust, every ache for her, would call Jake closer. Closer to the edge. Closer to control. The cost of power. The cost of Shanti. And it had already begun. His eyes flickered. Ice blue. Then gold. Not fully Vladimir. Never again. The moon loomed low over Volantis, knocked him like a silent, judgmental god, vast, pale, and pitiless, casting its argent light across the jagged spires of the Mondragon Winter Palace. A cathedral of shadows and ancient blood. It stood like a crown of ice and fire. And within its throne of silence, Vladimir ruled alone. The royal bed beneath him groaned under the weight of a restless body, bare-chested, skin slick with sweat. Sheets tangled like restraints around his long legs. His chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. He hadn't moved for hours. Not truly. Not even the cold could wake him from the hell he was drowning in. Sleep had not come. And when it did, it dragged him under like a riptide of memory and madness. It started gently, deceptively, like a lover's touch in the dark. Fingertips, soft, trembling, gliding over the carved ridges of his torso. Lips, desperate, feverish, pressing kisses along the arch of his neck. A broken whisper. Jake. No. Vladimir. The names melted together. So did the time. The faces. The sins. And in that melting, there was only her. Shanti. Straddling him in white lace. The kind that didn't hide anything, only highlighted what should have been forbidden. Her thighs flaxed as she moved above him. Her hips grinding. Teasing, her body trembling with heat and hunger. Her hair cascaded like dark flame, wild around her flushed face. Her eyes locked onto his, open, wet, drowning in lust. Please, she begged, voice cracking as she rocked slowly, cruelly. Don't stop. His hands reached up before he knew what he was doing, framing her face like he was holding a dying flame. Jake's memories flooded in. How he worshipped her but never touched what he wasn't allowed. How he held himself back. Always. But Vladimir was not Jake. He didn't want reverence. He wanted ruin. With a growl, he surged up, gripping her waist, flipping her beneath him in one violent motion. He pressed her wrists into the mattress, pinning her there as her breath caught in a whimper of shocked pleasure. No more waiting. He hissed against the shell of her ear, his voice frayed at the edges, ragged with hunger. You're mine. Her body arched beneath him, open, welcoming. And then, he thrust into her with a force that stole both their breaths. Not slow. Not careful. A brutal claiming. Her scream shattered the stillness of the dream. her nails raking down his back, her legs wrapping around him with wild desperation. Vladimir. Every thrust felt like a war, his hips slamming into her with vicious rhythm, his mouth devouring hers in tangled breaths. His body trembled above hers, losing rhythm, losing reason. Until he came. Loud, raw, his voice breaking apart with her name on his lips. Her name. Only hers. And then. Darkness. His eyes flew open with a gasp, his chest seizing like he'd surfaced from drowning. The air around him was ice, but his body burned. His cock throbbed violently, slick with his own release, staining the sheets beneath him. His muscles twitched, locked in the aftershock of a dream too real, too consuming. Fuck. He snarled, teeth grinding as he slammed a fist into the mattress hard enough to shake the headboard. But the heat didn't leave. It clung. It dug in deeper. Twisting. Howling. It demanded satisfaction. Moments later, the palace echoed with the sound of boots against marble. Vladimir stalked into the grand hall shirtless. A predator in a gilded cage. Golden eyes dark with unspeakable want. Two women waited. Perfect, practiced, ready. Courtesans trained by generations to serve the legacy of Mondragon. They knelt gracefully before him, heads bowed, eyes gleaming with seduction and submission. They looked up at him like he was a god. But to Vladimir? They were ghosts. He didn't speak. He didn't smile. He simply stared through them as they crawled toward him, their hands already undoing the buckle of his pants. One brushed her lips against his stomach, trailing her tongue lower. The other kissed along his neck. Breath hot, voice soft. Your Highness. He grabbed her jaw, forcing her mouth to his throat. Eyes still distant, locked on an image only he could see. Shanti. She was always there. In every shadow. In every gasp. He flipped both women onto the bed with one practiced motion. They giggled, thinking it foreplay. Thinking it meant desire. It wasn't desire. It was madness. He entered the first one without hesitation. His thrusts brutal, merciless. No softness. No words. Only need. But even then, his eyes were shut. And in his head, it was her. Her voice. Her scent. Her slick heat gripping him as he pounded into her with punishing force. Shanti. He groaned into the void, shuddering violently as he spilled inside the stranger. But the emptiness remained. The second woman mounted him with a sultry purr, grinding against his raw need. He let her. Only because her face flickered as Shanta's in his mind. He grabbed her hips and drove into her like a man trying to kill a ghost. Each snap of his hips rougher than the last. Until the bed frame slammed into the stone wall in rhythm with their collision. She moaned. She cried out. But it wasn't her voice he heard. It was hers. Shanta's moans, her cries. The trembling way she used to whisper Jake's name before it became taboo. Before Vasper made her scream something else. He wanted to erase that. All of it. To burn it from her soul. To carve his name into her bones. Mine. He whispered as he came again. Violently, broken. Time blurred. Hours passed. When it was over, the women lay on either side of him, used, forgotten, silent. But he did not sleep. He stared up into the dark ceiling like it was a black hole trying to swallow him whole. His muscles twitched. His cock ached. His obsession pulsed like poison in his blood. The hunger remained. And in the deepest, most corrupted part of his soul, a promise stirred. A vow. If I can't have you, I'll take you another way. Vasper's penthouse, storm hours. Rain whispered like secrets against the towering glass walls of the Mondragon penthouse, so high above the glittering veins of the city that it felt as though the sky itself had swallowed them whole. Each droplet etched faint rivers down the cold panes, veiling the outside world in streaks of silver melancholy. In the distance, lightning stitched jagged scars into the charcoal clouds, flashes of silent fury that briefly illuminated the skyline like the ghost of a war long past. Inside, the world was a breath held still. A lone lamp glowed in the far corner of the master bedroom, its amber light casting elongated shadows across a floor and the edge of a sprawling, king-sized bed draped in black and silver silk. The air was cool, still, but laced with something. The electric residue of a dream not yet gone. Beneath the sheets, Shanta stirred. A tremor rippled through her thigh, her breath hitching as her legs twisted beneath the silk, searching for escape from something that wasn't there. Her fingers twitched, clenching, releasing, then curling again, clawing at the invisible. A sheen of sweat clung to her skin, glittering faintly in the dim light, even as the temperature around her whispered of winter. Her lips parted. A whimper escaped. Then, Jake. The name didn't fall from her. It ripped free, raw and jagged, like it had been clawing at her throat for hours. Her eyes snapped open. Wild. Glassy. She bolted upright with a gasp that sounded like drowning. The silk sheets slipped from her shoulders, pooling around her waist. Her chest heaved, her breath shallow and rapid, each inhale shaky, like her lungs couldn't decide if they belonged to her. Her hair, damp with sweat, clung to her temples and neck. Her hands clutched the bedding to her chest with knuckles white from strain. She didn't blink. Not yet. Her pupils darted, searching. The ceiling. The walls. Her breath fogged the air like she'd just been dragged from icy water. The dream. No. The nightmare. It still clung to her. Smoke in her throat. Ash behind her eyes. In her mind, she was still running, barefoot across a corridor of stone. Black and endless. Her feet pounding on cold marble slick with shadow. The air pressing against her lungs like drowning. Behind her. Footsteps. Not hurried. Measured. Inevitable. A voice. First low, almost pleading. Then cruel. Possessive. Come back to me. Stop running, Shanti. You're mine. You've always been mine. And his eyes, those eyes. Blue. Then gold. Then something else. Something wrong. She raised trembling fingers to her face, pressing the heels of her palms against her eyes as if she could erase the memory by force. Where am I? Who am I with? Then, like a whisper at the edge of her panic. Not him. Vasper. I'm with Vasper. I'm safe. But the thought felt fragile. Like breath on glass. A rustle beside her. The sheets shifting. A hand brushing fabric. Vasper. He wasn't startled awake. He hadn't screamed or gasped. Because he'd never truly been asleep. Not with the air changing like that. Not with her soul unraveling beside him in silence. His breathing had slowed. Stilled. And now, he turned. One arm reached for her slowly, sliding from beneath the covers. Muscles flexing in a lazy ripple beneath the skin of his bare torso. The light brushed over the hard planes of his chest, the curve of his shoulder. The shadows nestled in the angles of his collarbones. He sat up. Every movement unhurried but deliberate. His voice, when it came, was a low hum. Hoarse. Protective. Another nightmare? She couldn't speak. She just nodded, once. Then dropped her chin and stared at the sheets twisted in her fists. Vasper moved closer. The mattress shifted beneath his weight. His arms slid around her waist. Not possessive, not forceful. Anchoring. And yet, her body shivered. He felt it. Her muscles tense beneath his hand. Her skin ice-cold against his warmth. Was it? He paused. A breath. A storm behind his eyes. Him again? The answer was in the way she went still. How her breath caught. He didn't need her words. His jaw flexed. His fingers pressed slightly firmer against her side, grounding her. A silent vow. But inside him? A war burned. Not rage. Jealousy. Not the petty kind. Not insecurity. No. This was spiritual jealousy. The kind that bloomed when the woman he adored was haunted. Hunted, touched in her sleep by the phantom of a man long dead. Jake. Even in death, that name clung to her. Branded her. Touched her where Vasper could not reach. And that was unbearable. He didn't speak again. Not yet. Words wouldn't help. He simply pulled her gently into his chest. Let her collapse into him. His arms wrapped around her as if she were made of porcelain. His chin rested against her head. One hand threaded into her hair, brushing through damp strands with an absent-minded rhythm meant to soothe. I'm here, he murmured. You're safe. She buried her face into his bare skin, her breath shaky, her fingers curling into his chest. The scent of him wrapped around her. Clean, sharp, grounded. Like cedarwood in smoke and warmth. But her ghosts followed. Jake. No. Vladimir. Chasing her through corridors that didn't end. Whispering. Promising. Burning her name into the void. You'll be mine. One way or another. Her voice was barely audible against Vasper's skin. He won't stop. Even when I sleep. He's there. His fingers stilled. His pulse, beneath her cheek, ticked harder. He ran a hand through her hair again, slower now, but the storm in him built. How do I fight what isn't alive? How do I destroy what lives in her mind? But worse. Why does it break me? Every time she says his name? Jake. Dead. Buried. And still. He owned corners of her that Vasper couldn't reach. For 5 nights, this had plagued her. Her energy drained. Her eyes distant. Their Japan plans abandoned. Her spirit dim. Vasper had tried. Everything. Lavish distractions. Quiet nights. Laughter. Music. Nothing touched her. Nothing reached her. And now, she sat trembling in his arms. A goddess broken by ghosts. He looked at her. Eyes gleaming in the half-light. Relax, my love. He said softly. Lifting her chin with 2 fingers. His thumb brushed the sweat from her cheek. Her eyes met his, red-rimmed. Glistening with shame. I'm sorry. Don't be. His voice wrapped around her like velvet and steel. You didn't choose this. You're not responsible for what lives in your memories. You shared something with him once. That doesn't make you guilty. But I feel like part of me still feels something. Not love, just unfinished. Confused. Tied to him. He swallowed. And then he kissed her. Once on the forehead. Once on the temple. Once on the cheek. Slow. Grounding. Deliberate. Each kiss a nail in the coffin of that memory. I don't care how long it takes. He whispered against her skin. But I will be the one you wake up to. Not him. Her breath caught. I want to forget him. She whispered. But he's in my head. I see him. Hear him. Feel. She stopped, ashamed. But Vasper didn't flinch, didn't pull away. He held her tighter. Then let me drown him out. His voice was gravel and fire. Not lust, war. She looked up, startled. And in his eyes, she saw it. The fire. The storm. The devotion. The silence between them thickened, dense. Hot, suffocating. Like smoke coiling in her lungs. She sat rigid on the bed. The silk sheets gathered in trembling fists around her thighs. Her breath came in shallow, uneven sips, as though even the act of breathing might crack the fragile dam inside her. Her knuckles were white. Her body strung tight as a drawn bow, vibrating with something that wasn't quite fear, but wasn't peace either. The remnants of that dream, no, nightmare, still clung to her skin like sweat. She could feel Jake's voice echoing in her bones, his words slipping through the cracks of her mind like venom. But she wasn't alone. She knew that. Vasper was watching her. Not with the softness she'd grown used to when he soothed her after these terrors. No. Now, something else swirled in his eyes, darker, hotter. Possessiveness. Hunger. The air between them was electrified, charged with something she couldn't name. But she felt it in the rise of goosebumps across her skin. Her pulse thudded in her throat as he slowly rose to his knees beside her, his powerful frame lit by the faint golden glow of the bedside lamp. Devastating. I won't let him haunt you anymore, Vasper said, his voice low and dangerous, like thunder rumbling on the edge of a storm. Every word scraped through the silence, laced with something brutal, protective, raw. I don't care if he's dead, buried, or rotting in hell, he growled. I will rip him from your mind. Piece by fucking piece. Then, he moved. Slow. Controlled. Predatory. His hand slipped beneath the silk, trailing upward along her thigh. The sensation was molten. His palm seared her skin, possessive, reverent, dominant. His fingers splayed wide, curving into the soft flesh just above her knee. Her breath caught, sharp and stuttering. Vasper, she whispered, the syllables barely forming. His gaze locked with hers. Something feral burned in those eyes. Don't say his name, he growled, heat radiating off his skin. Not again. With a single, sure tug, he pulled the sheets from her body. The cold air kissed her bare skin. But it was his stare that made her shiver. She lay there, fully exposed. Nipples tight from both the chill and the sheer weight of his attention. He devoured her with his eyes. You're mine now, he said, voice rough, lips ghosting just above hers. His breath, warm and deliberate, brushed her mouth without giving her the kiss she craved. I'll erase him. I'll bury every memory of him beneath your moans. Beneath me. She couldn't speak. She didn't need to. Her body arched toward his touch like a plant starved for sunlight. Her hips lifted instinctively. Her hands released the sheets and reached for him instead, fingers aching for contact. For grounding, for him. She needed this. She needed him. To feel something real. Something stronger than the ghosts that hunted her in her sleep. She hadn't let him touch her in days. Guilt had built walls between them. She'd flinched from his fingertips, turned her back to his warmth. Every time he held her, Jake's face would rise behind her closed eyes, dragging her back to a past she no longer wanted but couldn't escape. But now she reached for Vasper, and he met her like a tide crashing into the shore. He pushed her gently into the pillows, his body hovering above her. Heat and shadow and command. His arms braced on either side of her head. The muscles of his shoulders taut, caging her in a haven of fire. You're shaking, he murmured, one hand drifting up to trace her jaw. His knuckles brushed along her cheek like the first touch of a storm. Are you afraid of me? She blinked up at him, heart thudding hard. Her voice cracked like broken glass. No, it's not fear. He stilled. That breath he'd been holding. Gone. Stolen by the truth between them. She saw it in his eyes. He didn't want just her body. He wanted her mind. Her soul. Every fractured piece that still remembered Jake, still grieved or doubted or trembled. He wanted all of her. Every inch. And she was ready to give it. Even if it burned her alive. That was all it took. Vasper's mouth crushed down onto hers with savage hunger. There was no hesitation. It wasn't just affection. It wasn't just a comfort. It was a brutal claiming. A furious declaration of possession that ripped the breath from her lungs. His lips devoured hers, hard, hot, and unyielding. His tongue plunging deep, commanding her mouth the way a storm commands the sea. His kiss was fire, and she was burning in it. Her moans spilled into him, helpless and aching, her hands flying to his head, fingers diving into his hair, gripping, twisting, clinging like she might shatter into dust if she let go. Vasper's hand found her thigh, hot and rough, sliding up with ruthless purpose. He gripped it tight, hooked it high around his waist, forcing her open, wide, vulnerable, until the soaked heat of her pressed hard against the solid, throbbing length of his cock. Barely restrained by the thin fabric of his boxers. "You're soaked," he hissed against her mouth, his voice raw and ragged, trembling with the force of his restraint. She whimpered, a broken sound full of guilt and aching need. He swallowed it. "Say it," he growled. His breath was molten. Every syllable was a command dragged from the depths of his soul. "Say you're mine. I'm yours." She gasped, the words fractured between tears and a rising wave of unbearable desire. He didn't wait. His fingers tore the nightgown from her trembling frame, ripping the delicate silk like it was paper. Like it insulted him by covering what was his. The fabric fluttered to the floor in a whisper. She lay bare beneath him, flushed, vulnerable, utterly exposed. "No more ghosts," he snarled, his lips dragging down to her collarbone. His teeth grazing her skin with a warning, then biting down just hard enough to claim. Not to hurt, but to mark her. To brand her. No more nightmares. You belong to me, Shanti. Every breath. Every scream. Yes, Vasper. The words barely passed her lips before he yanked off his boxers in a single violent motion. His cock sprang free. Thick, long, rigid, the tip already wet with arousal, veins pulsing, twitching with need. He didn't tease. Didn't ask. Didn't wait. He slammed into her in one brutal, perfect thrust. She cried out. Body arching violently, head thrown back, fingers clawing at the sheets. The stretch was overwhelming. Though she's ready. He was too much. He split her apart, filled her so deeply it felt like he reached her soul. Every nerve lit up, every inch of her trembling. But God, it was exactly what she needed. To be taken. To be claimed. To be his. Vasper grabbed both of her wrists and pinned them above her head, locking her beneath him like a vow. His body pressed down. Hot and hard, sweat slick and unrelenting. His hips started to move, slow at first, heavy with control. But then faster. Rough. Ruthless. Punishing. Every thrust drove into her like a sentence carved into flesh. "You'll remember this." He snarled against her throat, the words vibrating against her skin like thunder. Thrust. Not him. Thrust. You'll scream my name. Thrust. You'll dream of my hands. My mouth. My cock. She gasped, her vision blurring, tears and pleasure crashing together as her body writhed beneath him. Her legs locked tight around his waist. Heels digging into his back as she tried to hold on, but she couldn't. She was unraveling, coming apart in his arms. Vasper. Fuck. He growled like an animal and slammed deeper, harder. His hips pistoning into her with relentless power, hitting angles that made her cry out, scream, convulse. You want to be ruined? He hissed, voice feral. Then I'll ruin you, Shanti. I'll fuck every shadow of him out of this body. His hand shifted, sliding from her pinned wrist, trailing down, strong fingers wrapping beneath her knee. He lifted her leg, pressing it sideways up near her head, opening her completely. Her breath hitched, eyes wide with shock at the new depth as he pounded into her. Merciless, primal, desperate. The sound of skin slapping echoed in the room, punctuated by her cries and his snarls. His mouth buried against her throat again, his teeth sinking into her soft skin, nipping, sucking, marking. Mine. He growled into her flesh as her scream ripped through the air, his name bouncing off the walls. Fuck. He roared, and his voice vibrated down her spine like a live wire. Shanti screamed again, but it was soundless, like her body had forgotten how to form words. Only Vasper's name echoed through the room, over and over again. The only truth she had left. She clenched around him hard, tight, pulsing, wringing him like a vice, dragging him closer to the edge. Yes. That's it, baby. I'm yours. And you're mine. Vasper growled. And then she broke. Her orgasm hit like lightning, violent, wild, ripping through her. Her back arched, body trembling, legs quaking, walls clenching around him like she was trying to keep him inside forever. It wasn't just pleasure. It was release, redemption, resurrection. But he didn't stop. Not yet. Vasper grabbed her jaw, forced her to look at him, eyes wild, glassy, glowing. Look at me. He growled. Look at me when you come again. I want you to see who owns you. And then he fucked her harder, deeper. The bed creaked, slammed into the wall. Her pussy felt raw, she's wrecked, stretched beyond her limits. She could feel every ridge of him, every pulsing inch. Her scream tore from her lungs. His name a sob, a prayer, a curse. Vasper. Her hands flew to her head, fingers clawing at the sheets as he pounded into her. And it felt like her entire body would split in half from the intensity. I'm the only one. He snarled. The only one who gets to ruin this pussy, even in your dreams. His voice was low, animalistic, dripping with rage and claim. He crashed down into her mouth, his lips devouring hers again, sucking her soul out with every kiss, until she was nothing but heat and whimpers. And then climax roared toward them like a wave of fire. They screamed each other's names. Their moans tangled in the air, wild, broken, desperate. Vasper's curses fell from his lips like a storm, muttered against her skin. His eyes, dark and wrecked, stared at her like she was the only thing keeping him alive. And again. And again. Until Shanti shattered a second time. Her body seized, eyes rolling back as stars exploded behind her eyelids. She screamed his name, choking, sobbing, trembling, unable to stop. And then Vasper followed her. He slammed deep, roaring her name, his cock pulsing, spilling inside her, hot, endless, consuming, as if he was pouring every drop of his love, hate, fury, and devotion into her womb. Mine. He growled again, broken, breathless. He collapsed on top of her, panting. Their sweat-slicked bodies tangled, heat radiating from every pore. Silence returned. Sacred. Absolute. Minutes passed. They didn't move. Still connected. Still one. Finally, Vasper released her trembling thighs. Her body twitched with the aftershocks. He slowly pulled out. And her whimper was soft, spent. Gently, he grabbed the shirt draped on the headboard, wiped them down with care, then pulled her limp, boneless body onto her side, facing him. He cradled her head, kissed her temple. His voice was low, rough, bare. No one else. He whispered. Not in memory. Not in dreams. Not in this life or the next. Only me, Shanti. Only me. Let's go to Japan. Do you want to visit your best friend Jasmine? Vasper's voice was soft and teasing. His tone almost lazy. But the undercurrent in it was deliberate, seductive. The edge of a smile played at the corners of his lips as he watched her across the table. His gaze lingered on her with the kind of hunger that could melt steel. Even as she lifted a forkful of his baked mac to her lips. Something simple, yet intimate. Because he had made it just for her. She took the bite, sighing softly at the taste. A small smudge of cheese sauce clung to the corner of her mouth, something innocent. But nothing stayed innocent under his gaze. Before she could reach for a napkin, Vasper leaned forward across the table, slowly, eyes never leaving hers. He closed the distance until his mouth was near hers, and then, with the most sinful precision, he licked it away. Slow. Intentional. Possessive. The warm drag of his tongue on her skin made her breath catch. A sharp jolt of heat shot straight from the corner of her lips down to her chest and coiled violently between her legs. Under the table, his cock twitched, hardening fast, pressing against the tight fabric of his boxers. It was already growing, stretching, begging for friction. He shifted slightly, angling his hips to hide it, but it was useless. Every inch of him burned. His imagination darkened. He could see it, so vividly it felt real. Her bare body bent over the same dining table, her face flushed, her hands gripping the edge for support as he pounded her from behind, deep and merciless. The vision made his blood run hotter. His stare turned hungry, wicked, possessive. She looked up and met his gaze, and time froze. Her breath hitched audibly. Her spoon halted in midair, suspended between the plate and her lips. The intensity in his eyes stripped her bare. It was like he could see into her soul, into every ache, every want, every forbidden thought she tried to lock away. Her body betrayed her. Her pussy throbbed violently beneath the table, a deep pulse that made her thighs clench on instinct. She squeezed them tighter, trying to cage the sudden wet heat blooming between her legs. But it was already too late. Her panties were already sticking to her. Her breathing became shallow, fast, uneven. She didn't dare shift in her seat, afraid he'd smell just how ready she was. Yes. I want that too, she whispered, her voice barely steady. It cracked on the last word. She bowed her head, trying to hide her flushed cheeks and the panic rising in her chest. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her water glass. She tried not to spill it, but her fingers didn't feel steady. God. What the fuck is wrong with me? He's your husband, Shanti. Why the hell are you still acting like a virgin under his gaze? Her inner voice screamed at her, frustrated and breathless. He always looked at her like this. Always. And yet, every time, it still undid her. Still made her fall apart like she was his for the first time. She took a long sip of water, willing the fire in her blood to calm. It didn't help. Her lips felt dry again the moment the glass left her mouth. Like desire had burned the moisture away. She's going to be shocked when she sees you, she whispered, more to herself than to him. The last time she saw us was at that farewell party. The one Jake threw before the vacation. But Vasper wasn't hearing her. Not really. His fork scraped across the plate absent-mindedly, but his eyes never left her. They remained locked on her face. Like he was memorizing every tremor, every breath, every shift of emotion. She placed her glass down, her lips slightly parted as she breathed through them. Her throat was dry again. Her skin tingled. Her whole body ached. God damn him. How was she supposed to feel normal when he looked like this? Wild and untamed, his dark hair tousled from the earlier sex in the bedroom. The rawness of that moment still clung to his skin, like a second layer of desire. He looked like sin incarnate. And she was unraveling. She squirmed slightly in her seat, trying to ease the tension. But it only made it worse. She could feel the wetness soaking her underwear now, warm, slick, sinful. Her arousal clung to her inner thighs. Her lips parted, and her tongue darted out to wet them again, trying to find relief. But it wasn't thirst she was trying to quench. Then, a low, guttural hum rumbled from Vasper's chest. She looked up, mistake. Their eyes locked again. That was it. The final thread snapped. His body moved before thought. He grabbed his water glass and downed it in one go. She watched his throat move as he swallowed. The way his Adam's apple bobbed. The muscles in his neck flexing with tension. Her breath caught again. She couldn't stop staring. He looked fucking edible. And he saw it. He saw every flicker of desire on her face. When he set the glass down, his smirk twisted into something dark. Ferocious. Animalistic. Then, before she could blink, he was out of his chair, sudden. Fluid, predatory. And beside her in a flash. She gasped, startled. He didn't speak. He just grabbed her, hands gripping her waist, and crashed his mouth against hers. The kiss wasn't gentle. It was devouring, commanding, a violent declaration of want. She barely had time to react before her back hit his chest. Then her thighs were lifted, legs wrapping instinctively around his waist. Her body settled against his lap, straddling him. She could feel the thick press of his cock, hard and straining beneath her, begging for release. Their mouths clashed in a wild rhythm, hungry, unrelenting. Like two beasts starved for each other. Her arms flew around his neck, her fingers clawing into his hair, yanking him impossibly closer. She moaned. Loud. Raw. He groaned against her lips, hands gripping her hips like he owned her. Of course he owned her. Always. The kitchen echoed with the frantic sounds of their desperation. Breathless, messy, beautiful. When she finally tore her lips away to breathe, her chest heaved. Her lips were swollen, wet, trembling. Vasper, she whispered, almost in warning. But the way he looked at her, his pupils blown wide, his lips slick, his jaw tense, told her everything. Breakfast was over. The real feast was just beginning. Vasper's hand wrapped firmly around the back of her neck, pulling her into another searing kiss, possessive, fiery, and unrelenting. These fucking lips. He growled into her mouth, his voice rough and raw, thick with obsession. So damn delicious, my love. She barely had time to moan before she was lifted. Her breath catching as Vasper hoisted her up with ease and sat her down on the cool, wide marble counter. The chill of the stone kissed her thighs, contrasting the burning heat of his body as he stepped in. Aligning their waists perfectly, mouths still fused, breath still shared. The kiss deepened, messy and maddening. He kissed her like he was starved. Like he'd never tasted her before. Like he never would again. Then came the shift. With one swift, deliberate tug, he yanked the top of her silk dress down, exposing her breasts to the open air. She gasped, her back arching as his hand came up and seized one breast with primal hunger, squeezing until she felt the sharp flare of pain spike into shivering pleasure. The warmth of his palm, the strength of his grip, it made her toes curl. His mouth tore from hers, dragging along her jaw, lower. Lower, until his lips latched onto the soft skin of her neck. He sucked hard, biting down just enough to brand her, staking a claim with his teeth. Her moan turned feral as one of his hands dipped lower, hooking into the garter of her lace panties, yanking them down with practiced ease until they were nothing but a memory on the floor. Vasper, she gasped, her voice tremulous and wild, her body arching off the counter, desperate to meet him halfway. Her fingers tangled into his thick, dark hair, pulling him against her bare chest as her nipples begged for his mouth. And he gave it to her. He devoured her. One breast, then the other, sucking greedily. Lapping over her peaks, his teeth scraping in a way that made her whimper and squirm beneath his mouth. Then his hand. His fingers slid between her parted thighs, finding her soaked center. He stroked along her folds, up and down, slow, deliberate, until he reached her throbbing clit. One touch, one teasing swirl of his fingers, and her hips bucked against him. She was soaked, dripping, utterly undone. "You're soaking wet," he murmured darkly, eyes blazing as he pulled back just enough to watch her unravel. His gaze flicked between her flushed face and the way her pussy glistened under his touch. "Look at you. God. You're beautiful like this." He spread her wider, grabbing one thigh and pushing it open, exposing her shamelessly to his gaze. Then he slid a thick finger inside her. She cried out, the fullness catching her breath. Then a second finger joined, stretching her, filling her in a way that made her claw at his arm. Her nails dragging hard down his skin. "Look at me," he growled, voice low and commanding. Her eyes fluttered open, glassy and dazed, locking onto his. He held her gaze as he slowly pumped his fingers inside her. Each movement wrecking her. Dragging her deeper into madness. "Why are you so fucking hot?" he whispered, breathless, struggling not to lose control. His cock strained violently against the confines of his boxers. The head already peeking out, slick and throbbing. "Why can't I resist the fire you give me?" Her body was a vision, writhing, trembling, clutching the edge of the counter as she moaned his name like a prayer. "Yes. Let it be my name alone that leaves your lips," he snarled, possessive and wild. She couldn't speak. Her answer came in a shattered moan and a frantic nod. Her eyes dropped and saw it. His cock. Thick. Engorged. Glistening. Instinct took over. She reached for it, wrapping her hand around his shaft. The second she touched him, Vasper growled, deep. Animalistic, primal. It rumbled through his chest and into her bones. Then he snapped. In a blur, he climbed and he dropped to his knees, pushed her thighs wide, and buried his face between them. She screamed. His tongue plunged into her heat with reckless hunger, licking her like a man starved. Like she was the only thing that had ever mattered. Her fingers tangled in his hair, gripping tight as her body convulsed. He licked. He sucked. He worshipped. His tongue swirled around her clit, flicking mercilessly, humming low against her soaked folds as her cries filled the kitchen. "You're fucking delicious, my love," he groaned, breath hot on her core. "This pussy is mine. Mine alone. And it deserves to be worshipped." He pressed a kiss against her clit, then whispered, "This is my favorite meal." Before diving in again. Sloppier. Messier. Hungrier. She was a wreck. Her spine pressed hard against the cold countertop, her thighs trembling around his head. She felt herself breaking, every nerve stretched thin. Every breath ragged. And still he didn't stop. Then, his fingers slid back inside her. Too deep. Curling perfectly against that spot that made her see stars. His mouth sealed over her clit again, sucking harder. She exploded. Her scream echoed, her body arched. Her pussy clenched tight around his fingers. Her vision blurred as her orgasm tore through her like a storm. She convulsed, crying out his name over and over, sobbing from the pleasure. From the overwhelming intensity of it all. "Give it to me, baby." Vasper growled darkly, voice hoarse with need, lips soaked in her. "Let me taste every fucking drop." And she did. Her climax hit like a tidal wave, and Vasper drank from her like a man who'd been dying of thirst. And still, he didn't stop. He drove her toward the edge of madness. One of his hands showed no mercy, fingers digging into the soft swell of her breast, kneading and claiming it with primal hunger. Her nipples peeked hard beneath his rough touch, sensitive and aching. He urged her to release, to surrender everything, body and soul. Meanwhile, his other hand plunged deep into her slick heat, his fingers thick, relentless, fucking her with a rhythm so feral it left her gasping, shattered. Her hips no longer touched the counter. With a single, brutal lift of his arm, he raised her pelvis, holding her suspended in the air, her ass barely skimming the cold countertop. The strength he used on her breast now drove into her soaked pussy, his fingers pounding mercilessly, knuckles deep, curling with perfect pressure. And still, his mouth never left her clit. His lips latched onto her swollen bud, tongue and mouth working in perfect, savage rhythm, sucking harder, deeper, with each second. He devoured her like a starving man, and she broke beneath him, her back arched, body bowing off the counter like a drawn bow, her scream tearing free, a broken, guttural cry of his name. Vasper! It ripped from her throat, tangled in a moan that came not just from her lips but from the very center of her being, primal and unstoppable. Vasper growled against her, a deep, animalistic sound that vibrated through her clit and straight into her core. Her body convulsed, racked by a climax so raw, so overpowering, she forgot her name. Her soul splintered as she thrashed beneath him. She tried to push his head away, her thighs trembling, her pussy hypersensitive and twitching. But he didn't stop. Not until he'd tasted every last drop. She gazed down at him, breathless, her body trembling like a leaf in a storm. His head remained nestled between her thighs, tongue slowly, lazily licking her clean. Each stroke was reverent, deliberate, like he was savoring something holy. A dazed smile curved on her lips, sweet and spent, as her lungs fought to catch up with the chaos inside her. When he finally lifted his head, his eyes were wild, burning, possessed. His lips gleamed with her essence. And without warning, he grabbed her again, lifting her from the countertop like she weighed nothing. She squealed in surprise, then laughed breathlessly, light and giddy. Their eyes met, and the look between them held 1,000 unspoken truths. Fierce, electric, unbreakable. He carried her like treasure to the massive sofa, and tossed her onto it with playful force. She bounced lightly, breath catching in laughter. But before she could move, Vasper was already on top of her, pressing her down, crashing his mouth onto hers. Their kiss was wild, messy, heated. She tasted herself on his lips, salty, sweet, intoxicating. "You're the best fucking meal I've ever had, my love," he whispered against her mouth, his voice a low, ruined rasp that made her clench all over again. Her hands slid between their bodies, instinct guiding her. She found his cock, hard, pulsing, straining violently against his boxers. She wrapped her fingers around it, feeling the impossible thickness, the heat. He groaned, a sound so deep and guttural it shook her bones. His chest pressed against hers, muscles like carved stone, and she could feel the tremble in his restraint. She tugged his boxers down with shaking hands. He helped her, discarding them in a flash, revealing his full length, thick, veined, glistening at the tip. Her breath caught, arousal surging back in a crashing wave. He lined himself up at her soaked entrance, his cock head pressing against her folds, teasing her slit. She whimpered, needy and raw, her body already arching up to meet him. He smirked darkly, then slowly, torturously, began to slide into her. They held their breaths together, his cock sinking inch by glorious inch into her tight heat. Her walls clenched greedily, fluttering, welcoming him. He bit his lower lip hard, jaw tight with restraint, as his hips gently rocked deeper. "Fuck," he hissed. She moaned his name, broken and breathless, her nails digging into his arms as her back arched. Every stretch, every push, every inch of him was perfection, deep, full, claiming. He grabbed her jaw, tilting her face toward him, his eyes fierce and unwavering. "I want to see your face," he growled, breath brushing her lips. I want to watch you fall apart on my cock. She whimpered in answer, her body helpless beneath him, needing more. His hands slid down between them again, fingers expertly finding her clit, rubbing it in brutal, perfect circles as he thrust harder, deeper. Dominant, hungry, unstoppable. Vasper! She cried out, her voice ragged and cracking. Yes, that's it. He snarled, eyes wild. Only my name should leave that mouth. Only I have the right to fucking ruin you. He drove into her with force now, unleashing everything. Their cries filled the air, tangled, frantic. He reached beneath her, grabbing a throw pillow and shoving it under her ass, lifting her hips higher, angling her so deep it made her gasp, eyes wide, mouth falling open in shock and pleasure. And then, he slammed into her, so deep she could feel him in her stomach. Her hands clawed at his back, her thighs locking around his waist. He fucked her like he was built for it, like her body had been made for him alone. Their eyes met again. Ferocious, desperate. Vasper's face was that of a man possessed, raw, beautiful, hers. He knelt between her spread thighs, his cock driving into her soaked heat, worshipping her with every thrust. Even as he ruined her. And Shanti welcomed every second of it. Because this god of a man, this dangerous, beautiful beast, he was hers. And she was his. The moment she clamped down on him, her inner walls fluttering violently, squeezing like her body never wanted to let go. A low, animalistic growl surged from his throat. He lost whatever restraint he had left. His thrusts became punishing, primal, each one hammering into her with an urgency that bordered on savage, dragging across every swollen nerve inside her. She screamed, loud, wild, raw, while his own growl tore through the room like thunder. Their voices were symphonies of pleasure, raw, echoing off the walls. Her cries only spurred him on. His arms were wrapped tight around her trembling body, his forearms flexing, muscles rigid as steel, caging her in like a man possessed. Holding her close, locked underneath him as he drove deeper and deeper. She couldn't move. Her thighs clenched around his hips, trembling as she locked her heels into his back. Her legs had wound themselves tightly around his waist. Her fingers clawed into his back like she was marking him, each scratch a desperate claim in the chaos, anchoring herself in the chaos of pleasure he was unleashing. Come with me, my love. He snarled against her mouth, his lips brushing hers, his breath hot, their noses bumping as their foreheads pressed together in near delirium. And then it hit, a blinding, full-body detonation, like a lightning strike tearing through both of them. Her body convulsed, pulsing around him, milking him with an almost desperate hunger, as he emptied himself deep inside her. His cock throbbed, still twitching, still grinding slowly as she rode out her high. His hips rolling in slow, deep pulses like he was trying to bury himself inside her forever. He could feel her hips bucking against him in desperate waves, clinging to that last stretch of euphoria, her nails digging into his shoulders, her head thrown back in surrender, his entire body locked up around her. He forgot his strength. His hold became suffocating. She could barely breathe, her lungs gasping, her chest heaving against his as the force of him crushed into her. Her hoarse whisper brushed against his ear as she gasped, I can't breathe. That snapped him back. His head dropped to the crook of her neck, his damp forehead brushing her collarbone, lips brushing against her damp skin as he gently loosened his grip. But he was still buried deep inside her, refusing to leave the warmth that had claimed him like a vice. Minutes passed in that sacred stillness, the heat of their bodies steaming against one another, their mingled breaths the only sound in the room. I love you, he whispered against her ear, his lips barely parting, as if the words themselves were sacred. She whispered it back, again and again, until it was a chant, a vow, a melody between their exhausted lips. Each repetition was softer, like prayer, and yet more powerful than anything they'd ever spoken. "I love destroying your pussy, my love," he teased in a low, husky voice, his teeth grazing her ear like a secret he was daring her to enjoy. She giggled and smacked his shoulder, her laugh shaky and breathless, like she couldn't believe she was still alive. His head lifted, and their eyes met, playful, wild, full of heat. He kissed her again, this time slow, almost reverent, until he felt it. He was getting hard again. Already. Her pussy was tightening around him like it sensed it too, as if it never wanted to be empty again, as if it was molding itself to remember his shape. Is this normal? She must have been wondering. But she wouldn't say it. Not when her body was betraying her, aching for more. Not when only he had ever been inside her. Only him. And the ghost of someone in her dreams, Jake. No. He growled low in his throat and started moving again. He couldn't stop. His hips rolled, slow at first, circling deep like he was carving his name into her soul. Then faster as they kissed hungrily, mouths crashing, teeth grazing, tongues battling like two lovers starved for lifetimes. Then, ring! They both froze. Their eyes snapped to the telephone near the giant flat screen. Shit. His jaw clenched tight. That line never rings unless it's urgent. Shanti must have sensed it, too. She pressed a palm to his chest and pushed him back, still panting, her brows furrowed with concern. "Answer it," she said softly, clearly worried. He didn't want to. He was still inside her. But he nodded. He stood up, lifting her with him, her legs still wrapped around his waist, her arms around his neck. She laughed, clinging to him like a stubborn little koala, her lips brushing against his shoulder, her moans still echoing in her throat, while half of his cock remained inside her. One hand grabbed her ass, the other reached for the phone. But before answering, he gave her a kiss, possessive, claiming, his lips crashing onto hers like he was sealing a promise with fire. Her gaze drifted to the mirror wall near the gym. She watched them in it. Their disheveled hair, their flushed faces. They looked insane, but also beautiful. Her smile told him everything. He picked up the line. Silence on the other end. Just breathing. His jaw locked tighter. Then he hung up. "Who was that?" she asked curiously, still wrapped around him like a fevered dream. He didn't answer. He carried her to the couch. "I'll tell you later," he murmured, lowering them both down. "Let's finish this first." And then he kissed her again, deep, demanding, and she straddled him right there on the sofa, her body sinking down with aching slowness, her pussy swallowing him whole like it was made for it. They devoured each other all over again, their skin slapping, sweat dripping, moans muffled by hungry mouths, drowning in each other's fire until nearly an hour had passed. When they were finally spent, she was sprawled on the sofa like a wilted flower, lips parted, limbs limp, body glowing, gorgeous, ruined, and completely his. She begged him to stop. She could barely walk. Her pussy was swollen, her clit aching, her whole body trembling. He helped clean her up. She couldn't even stand properly, so he fetched her dress and underwear, gently wiping her down. He offered to take her to the healing bath, but she refused. Too drained even for that. He smirked. She glared at him as he chuckled like a wicked bastard. He couldn't help it. She looked too damn irresistible when she was annoyed and sore. He caught her staring between her legs, inspecting the damage. Her poor pussy looked tender, abused, divine, beautiful. "Why?" he asked with mock innocence. She just looked at him like she didn't know whether to laugh or scream. "It's swollen," she muttered, covering herself. "Let me see," he said, peeling her hand away. Her face turned red as he stared, biting his lower lip. "It's fucking beautiful and looks delicious, baby," he murmured. Then he leaned down like he was going to kiss it. "Don't," she gasped, pushing his head away. "Vasper, please. It needs rest." She scrambled to pull on her underwear, looking like she wished she could lock it in a chastity belt. He only smiled and pulled her back into his arms, crushing her beneath him again. "I'm sorry," he whispered against her lips. "But I will never, ever stop destroying your pussy, my love. That's a promise. For as long as I live." Her lips parted in disbelief, eyes wide, speechless. Then he laughed, deep, rich, and full of mischief. That look on her face. It was everything. She melted again, her knees weak, her heart a mess. God, he loved breaking her like this. And he'd never stop. Vasper stood silently at the edge of the sofa where his beautiful wife lay, a glass of whiskey resting in his right hand. His eyes were locked on the breathtaking, dangerously irresistible woman lying before him. His wife. Her arms were raised above her head, knees bent and resting against a throw pillow. Her entire pose exuding an effortless sensuality that stole his breath. Her face still looked innocent in sleep, but her body, God. Her body radiated seduction with every curve, every rise and fall of her chest. Even in slumber, she was art. A siren wrapped in silk and shadow. It took everything in him not to surrender to the fire crawling through his veins. He wanted to wreck her, devour her all over again. If only he wasn't holding back out of mercy for her. Her pussy was already swollen, trembling from the relentless pounding and mouth worship he had given her earlier. And even if he had his way, even if he could take her every hour of every day, he would never, ever grow tired of her. Never. His knuckles whitened around the glass. She was a constant ache. His favorite suffering. His throat dried further as he stared, helplessly enthralled. Fuck. He's so damn lucky, he murmured to himself. A whisper, rough and reverent, barely audible over the blood rushing in his ears. Memories from their past hit him like a crashing wave. Nearly dying, almost losing her forever. He was grateful he didn't give up. Maybe it was because of the stubborn nature of him. Hal had never stopped until he claimed what he wanted. And in all his years of living, he'd never met a woman who didn't fall into his arms the moment he wanted her. Never. Until Shanti. She was the first storm he never wanted to escape. Before her, every woman he desired came crawling, begging to be taken. It never crossed his mind to marry, to have a child. That was a different conversation altogether. He had his own reasons back then for not wanting kids. But Shanti, she changed everything. She transformed his world from the inside out. She cracked him open. Exposed the man he didn't know was hiding beneath all that power. Now, he wanted children. With her. He wanted to see a little girl with her smile, a little boy with her fire. It was a dream he never knew he had until she walked into his life. And yet, it was Samara who first gave him a child, an outcome he never planned. A result of a night he didn't fight hard enough to resist. And that mistake, it tore Shanti away from him. Pushed her into Jake's arms. The memory burned like whiskey down his throat, guilt crawling behind his ribs. That nearly killed him. Now Jake's gone, thanks to his father, but even in death, his presence still haunts Shanti in her dreams. Hunting her from the other side. Another attempt to steal her from him, perhaps? He laughed bitterly at the thought. There was nothing he could do except try to overwrite Jake's place in her memories, replace him with his. God. He prayed it would work. He hoped he'd never return to torment her in her nightmares. Some ghosts didn't need flesh to do damage. They only needed a mind, and hers was a battlefield. He'd peeked into her memories just once, but it wrecked him. He couldn't sleep after that. He couldn't bear the image of Shandy being taken, touched, kissed, by another man. It made him sick, even if it was just a dream. Even if he was her first. The one who took her virginity, he couldn't erase Jake's imprint from her mind. No matter how much he wanted to. Sometimes, he wished he had Alexander's power. The ability to erase memories, to remove another man's touch from her completely. He would have scorched him from her soul, given the chance. Anything to make her mine, and mind as well as flesh. He turned away and walked back toward the bar, placing his glass on the countertop with a heavy breath. Then he returned to the sofa where Shanty was sleeping. And that's when his lungs forgot how to breathe. His heart flatlined. Then thundered to life again. Her thighs were spread wide, and the black lace of her panties barely concealed the sacred center he had worshipped so many times. Fuck. Don't do this to me. His teeth clenched, jaw tight with restraint. She had no idea the torment she was putting him through. Her leg shifted slightly. A soft sigh escaped her lips. He nearly lost control. He dropped slowly to the sofa beside her, careful not to wake her. His whole body trembled as he sat upright, barely able to breathe from the intensity of wanting her. His eyes flicked toward the leopard-printed scarf draped over the arm of the sofa. He grabbed it and gently covered her half-naked form. But not before his gaze dropped once more to the thin lace veiling her pussy. His resolve thinned to nothing. God help me. God. How he wanted to bite it. To grip it in his hands. To spread her apart and lick her until her cries filled the room and she collapsed, boneless and wrecked under his tongue. His chest pounded like a drum as he stared. Why should he even cover her if he's enjoying this view so much? And when he checked the time, he didn't care. None of it mattered. He leaned back into the sofa, his eyes feasting on the sleeping goddess before him. She was oblivion in human form. His glorious ruin. Her thighs remained parted, the fabric of her dress riding high, doing nothing to hide the sinful masterpiece that was her body. Her beauty. And him? He was enjoying torturing himself. Every breath was a blade. Every heartbeat, a whip. His cock had been throbbing inside his jeans for far too long, rock hard. Aching. He finally gave in, unzipping, letting the head of his cock peek through, swollen and furious. It twitched with every breath he took, every second he stared. He was a man on the brink, stern-topped by the sight of the woman he couldn't stop loving. How long can he hold out like this? No. Let her rest. She deserves this sleep. Don't be a fucking animal, Vasper. But animals didn't feel love like this. Did they? But his hand was already wrapped around his cock, trembling. His whole body shivered from the unbearable need coiling in his gut. He couldn't take it anymore. He leaned in, slowly, deliberately, until his face hovered inches between her legs. Her scent met him first, warm and intoxicating. And he closed his eyes, savoring it. His lips parted, tongue slipping out to taste the air. And he bit down hard on his lower lip. One inhale and he was undone. She smelled like home and heat and heaven. God. You looked and taste so good, my love, he whispered under his breath. His fingers reached beneath the lace, nudging it gently aside at the very center, revealing the soft folds of her pussy. He needed to see her. Needed to look at her. He justified it to himself. She was sound asleep. She wouldn't wake up. Surely not. But part of him hoped she would. That she'd open her eyes and see nothing but worship in him. A wicked smile curled on his lips. He hummed low in his throat, thick with intention. If you wake up, baby, forgive me. Even if you're still swollen. But I'll take you to the healing bath after. His voice shook. His hands trembled. His entire body begged for release. He was seconds away from surrender. Every muscle strung with tension, every thought soaked in her. And yet, all he could do was kneel between her legs, devour her with his eyes. His mind lost in the battle between restraint and primal hunger. She was his salvation, his sin, and tonight, he feared he'd surrender to both. To hell with it, he muttered in his mind. Breath shallow, hands trembling. With a reverent slowness, he slipped his fingers, pushing it aside like unveiling a forbidden treasure. Her slick, glistening center, glimmering. His breath caught. His vision blurred. The world vanished. It was the most irresistible delicacy he'd ever tasted in his life, nothing else existed. His body moved on instinct, mind dissolving into pure need. He stole a glance at her face. She was still sound asleep. Her chest rose and fell in a soft rhythm, lips parted slightly, unaware of the raging storm she was inciting within him. Her beauty was untouched, fragile in slumber, but that innocence only poured gasoline on the fire eating him. Alive. She looked ruined and angelic all at once. And it was his doing. He was burning up. His cock was a ticking time bomb inside its denim cage. Angry, twitching, screaming for release. And there she was, the woman who had brought him to his knees. Curled like a dream beside him. Innocent. Vulnerable. His. She had no idea what she was doing to him. Or maybe she did. Maybe that made it worse. "I'm sorry, baby," he whispered hoarsely, his voice frayed with lust and apology, thick with restraint already on the brink. Then he leaned in. His tongue extended, slow and reverent, until it made contact. Her soft, sensitive slit greeting him like a blessing. He tasted her. One slow, deliberate lick upward. From the base of her folds all the way to her clit. "Fuck." He moaned against her warmth, his lips vibrating with hunger. She stirred. Her body flinched, just slightly. But it was enough. A soft gasp escaped her mouth, fragile and intoxicating. The sound made his cock throb so hard he nearly came right there. Still, he didn't stop. He dragged his tongue again, agonizingly slow, starting from the bottom, parting her slick folds with his mouth, tracing every contour. Tasting every drop, before flicking the tip of his tongue over her clit once more. He wanted to live in this moment. In this taste. In her. He hummed into her, his mouth pressed against her pussy like he was savoring the most exquisite dish ever served. Because she was. Nothing in this world compared to her taste. She was flavor, heat, and purity wrapped in sin. And he was possessive of it. Territorial. No one else would ever touch her. Not in this life. Not in any other. He licked again. A third time. Even slower. Her eyes fluttered open, lashes parting like petals, and their gazes locked. Her lips parted in a breathless surprise. Her expression was dazed, confused, and then replaced with something far more primal. Her fingers dove into his hair, tangling, gripping, possessive, desperate. She knew now. She felt it. And she knew it was too late to stop him. With one swift motion, he hooked her lace panties, yanked them down, and tossed them somewhere beside the sofa, forgotten. "I'm sorry. But I can't hold back anymore," he growled, low and dangerous, his voice wrecked with hunger. And then he dove in. Hungrily. Obsessively. But still careful, gentle enough not to hurt her. His lips wrapped around her soaked pussy, worshipping it with unrelenting passion. His teeth never scraped, but his tongue was ruthless, precise. She whimpered. Then moaned. Her hips lifted toward him, grinding into his face as if her body were begging for more before her mind could catch up. He gripped her thighs, spreading them wide, so wide they nearly reached her ears. He lifted her ass off the sofa, completely exposing her dripping heat to him. He was on his knees, and she was on her throne. He worshipped like a man sentenced to burn for this addiction. He licked her with slurping, hungry sounds, each lap messier, wetter, greedier. His moans echoed against her folds. She was loud now. Moaning. Pleading. Vasper, oh fuck. His name never sounded like that before. It was holy. He flicked his tongue over her clit, then pressed the tip against her entrance, teasing, tasting, stirring the heat that pooled inside her. Then he licked upward again, finishing with a slow suck on her swollen clit that made her scream. And then, 2 fingers. Thick. Hard. Deep. He thrust them inside her, curling upward, finding that sweet spot that made her walls tighten and her thighs quake. His fingers pumped relentlessly while his tongue never left her clit. He latched on, sucking, swirling, tasting her as she writhed beneath him. She jerked. Her hands slammed into the cushions, her back arching like a bow. Her moans grew wilder. More desperate. Please, Vasper. She cried, grinding her cunt into his face, completely at his mercy. He growled into her, deep, dark, feral. He didn't let up. His mouth moved like it belonged to the devil himself, merciless and skilled. His fingers drove into her faster, harder, curling with each thrust until she broke. Her orgasm hit like a shockwave. Her entire body convulsed violently, a scream caught between a sob and laughter tearing from her throat. She tried to push him away. But he didn't move. He held her hips down and kept going, licking through the flood of her release like he was starving, like he would die without it. She was laughing and crying, shaking with overstimulation, but he didn't stop until her pussy was clean, shiny with his saliva, twitching with aftershocks. Only then did he crawl up her trembling body, his lips finding hers in a kiss so soft, so slow, it melted time. She tasted herself on his tongue, and she welcomed it. She wrapped her legs around him. Her arms, too, trapping him in her embrace like a silk-wrapped cage. As their mouths moved in unison, he let his fingers slide back down between them, seeking her heat again. He pushed them inside her, slowly. Deliberately. She moaned into his kiss, her body arching. Still warm. Still wet. Still his. And he kissed her like there was no tomorrow. Their bodies moved together in a feverish rhythm, desperate and hungry, every brush of his skin against her sparking something wild inside her. She couldn't get close enough. Her hands slipped beneath Vasper's shirt, trembling as she traced the hard ridges of his abs, his warmth seeping into her palms like fire licking through her veins. She needed more. With a shaky breath, she tugged upward, needing him bare, needing him real against hers. He leaned back slightly, bracing himself with one elbow on the sofa. And in one smooth, confident motion, he pulled the shirt over his head. First one arm, then the other. His movements fluid, dominant, magnetic. When he tossed it aside and sat before her shirtless, she couldn't stop her eyes from devouring him. God, he was perfect. Every chiseled line, every inch of his skin pulled tight over firm muscle. She wanted to memorize it, brand it into her memory, into her soul. Hers. All hers. Then she leaned forward and kissed his chest. Hot, wet, open-mouthed kisses that tasted his sweat, his scent, his strength. She could feel a low growl rumble deep inside him as she kissed lower, dragging her lips down the center of his chest, right between those hard planes that flexed under her touch. And then her hand dipped lower, past his abs, past the edge of his jeans. She found him. Thick. Hard. Burning. Huge. The reason why she may not be able to walk straight after this, that's for sure. Her breath caught the moment her fingers wrapped around his cock through the denim. She felt him twitch violently at her touch, felt the heat radiating through the fabric. Still, neither of them said a word. Their mouths found each other again. Tongues tangling, teeth clashing, their moans swallowed in a messy, desperate kiss. Her fingers worked at his zipper, fumbling with the urgency of someone starved. She needed to feel him. Taste him, have him inside her until she couldn't breathe. But just as she got the zipper totally undone, ring! The sound sliced through their bubble like a blade of ice. They froze. The phone's shrill cry yanked them back into reality. Her heart raced. Not from arousal now, but from dread. Vasper cursed under his breath. Good thing he put it on auto answer so he didn't need to pick up the receiver anymore. Vasper, look at the TV. You're in big trouble. It was David. His voice sharp, panicked. She turned her head quickly, eyes wide, heart pounding harder. Are you listening? Call me or get over here. Bring Shanti. Do it now. Then click. Silence. She couldn't breathe for a moment. She stared at Vasper, and he stared right back, his jaw tight, his chest heaving. They were both stunned. The heat between them hadn't died, it just stood there now, smoldering, trapped between duty and desire. Then she shifted, reaching for her underwear. But after she slid them on, Vasper grabbed her wrist. We're not going anywhere. Not until we finish what we started. He growled, voice rough and deep with lust. He was seated now, legs spread, and he pulled her down onto his lap. She landed perfectly, straddling him, thighs wide around his hips, her body trembling. And then... rip. He tore her underwear clean off. Her gasp caught in her throat, her eyes wide with shock, but before she could speak, he grabbed her hips, lifted her, and brought her down hard onto his cock. She choked on a scream. He filled her, completely. Hot. Thick. Deep. She threw her head back, overwhelmed, her nails digging into his shoulders as he started to move her. Up. Down. Grinding. Her walls clung to him, sucked him in greedily. It was too much. It was everything. Her arms locked around his neck, her forehead pressing to his as they moved together, his mouth crashing into her. Each thrust sent lightning through her spine, each grind rubbed that spot inside her just right. She began to move harder, faster, riding him with a wild rhythm. But he matched her, thrusting up into her with powerful snaps of his hips. She could barely breathe. Her moans escaped into his mouth. Her name on his lips felt like sin and salvation in one. Just when the pressure was building so fast she thought she'd explode. He stopped. Lifted her. Spun her. He laid her face down on the sofa, her knees sinking into the cushions, ass arched high, completely exposed. And then... he slammed back into her. Ah, Vasper! She screamed, her face buried in the fabric, fingers clutching the armrest for dear life. He gripped her hips, slammed into her relentlessly. The wet slap of their skin echoed in the room, raw, primal, obscene. Then he lifted one of her legs, draping it over the arm of the sofa, opening her up even more. And his fingers found her clit. Fast. Merciless. Precise. Her body convulsed. Her thighs shook. She could barely form words. Vasper! She cried, voice breaking, her pussy clenching tight around him as he fucked her with ruthless intensity. She felt him lean forward. His chest hot on her back, his arm wrapping around her waist, his other hand still teasing her, playing her like an instrument. His lips brushed her ear. Look at us, baby. You're so fucking beautiful. Look at you. Her eyes fluttered to the mirror on the wall just outside his private gym. Their reflection. God. Her body rocked with every thrust, mouth open, moaning uncontrollably. He looked feral behind her. Sweat slicked. Muscles flexing, jaw clenched with need. It was the filthiest, most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. He bit her neck again. And that was it. She shattered. Her orgasm ripped through her like a violent wave, hips jerking uncontrollably, walls pulsing around his cock. Her knees gave out, but he caught her. Held her, never stopping. And then she felt him throb inside her. He spilled. Deep. Hot. He held her so tight she could feel his heart pounding against her back. They were tangled, sweaty, breathless. Still connected. He kissed the side of her neck, licked the salty sweat from her skin, and whispered, I love you. Tears burned in her eyes. I love you too, Vasper. She whispered back, her voice trembling, still lost in the haze of him. His fingers slid between her thighs again, teasing the swollen wetness there. Your voice. It's pulling me back in for another round, he murmured against her ear. We should frame this moment. Put it right at our front door. She laughed softly, breathlessly, and peeled his hand away with a smile. We still have to go, love. David sounded serious. Fuck David. He growled, still clearly not ready to stop. She shot him a playful warning glare. Vasper. But then. Ring. The phone again. Vasper. I know you're there. Get over here now. Look at the TV. Daimon and Samara are at a press conference. You're such an idiot. David's voice was furious. And this time, it landed like a blow. Vasper's entire expression changed. His jaw tightened. His eyes darkened. Just like that, everything changed. Seated across from them were the 5 guardians. She and Vasper were side by side at a wide, long table. Luxurious and formal, reminiscent of those in a high-level conference room. The table gleamed with a dark, polished mahogany finish, almost reflective, and the legs were carved in intricate spirals of gold-accented metal. Each seat was a masterpiece of craftsmanship. Plush, high-backed, and lined with black leather, armrests outlined with brass. The entire room was equally extravagant, high ceilings draped with velvet curtains, polished stone flooring, and crystal lights embedded into the walls gave the space a commanding glow. The atmosphere was deeply silent, thick with tension. This room was within David's mansion. A fortress cloaked in security. The walls were soundproof, reinforced with protective spells and high-tech barriers, making it impossible for anything inside to be seen, heard, or sensed from the outside. They had arrived here through Vasper's teleportation ability, and she saw his slight flinch of surprise when they landed. Shanti didn't expect this location, the forest mansion of David, the very same place where she had first been taken by the Guardians. The moment they stepped in, memories flooded her, memories tied to this place. The pain of loss. The haunting echo of her father's death. But more than that, this place held the memories of Jake Valerian, back when they were not yet lovers. Her thoughts drifted, deep and distant, as she sat quietly, eyes resting on the table in front of her, though her mind was nowhere near it. To her right, along the same table, sat Justin, Gabriel, Louis, Marco, David, and Jacob. Every one of them wore a look of grim seriousness. The air was heavy, loaded. The way David spoke earlier gave it away. This wasn't just another issue. It was something worse. Despite only having known David for a short time, one could tell he was not the type to get easily angry. He was level-headed, diplomatic. But now, the expression on his face was far from calm. His brows were drawn tightly together, his jaw clenched, and his eyes stormy with frustration. That alone made her heart thump a little faster. And yet, if there was anyone in the room they all feared the most, it wasn't David, it was Vasper. He sat beside her, still and powerful. His expression unreadable, yet clearly brooding. Intimidating in every inch of his presence. He wore a black long-sleeved shirt, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, exposing the tight cords of muscle along his forearms. 2 buttons were undone at the collar, revealing a tantalizing glimpse of his chiseled, rock-hard chest. Paired with ripped jeans and dark boots, he was effortlessly devastating. At 6 feet 5 inches, he radiated power, the kind that made men shrink and women tremble. His hair was tied back in a loose half-man bun, strands falling in soft disarray, giving him the commanding aura of a true king of Volantis Noctum. She knew Vasper was angry. Not just because of what was happening now, but because David's call had interrupted something intimate. They were in the heat of passion when the summon came. Wrong timing. Very wrong. His mood was wrecked. He held a pen between his fingers now, spinning it silently with dangerous precision, his gaze sharp and locked onto the Guardians, especially David and Jacob. His eyes burned with a silent challenge, a warning. To calm him, she gently squeezed his hand, which rested on her thigh. He responded with a firm, possessive grip. Then, slowly, his hand slid higher. Up the inside of her thigh, nearing her center. She stiffened. Her heart raced like a trapped bird in her chest, heat surging to her face. She turned red with embarrassment, the burn rising up her cheeks, but her hands turned ice cold. She could feel their stares on them. Watching. Judging. As if Vasper and her were under an X-ray, every motion dissected. The silence was suffocating. No one dared to speak yet. They were all locked in a waiting game, uncertain who would break the silence first. Then the monitor lit up. Samara's press conference from Japan, followed by Daimon's statement from New York. Samara, crying on screen. Her face a pitiful portrait of heartbreak. She accused Vasper of abandoning her while she was pregnant, and pointed a finger at her. According to her, she was the reason for their breakup, the cause of her pain. Still, the public didn't know that. Her tears, her drama, it worked. The audience lapped it up. Sympathy poured in. No one expected she would go as far as flying to Japan just to make a spectacle of herself in a press conference. And now, tension brewed across 3 nations, Samara's homeland, hers, and Japan. She could only imagine how Jasmine, her closest friend, was reacting right now. Honestly, she felt numb. So much had happened. She didn't even know how she should feel anymore. Her heart felt foreign to her. Then, suddenly, "David, if you're not going to say anything, we're leaving," Vasper said coldly, his voice sharp and commanding. "I can fix this mess. I'll handle Daimon." As he spoke, he gave her hand another firm squeeze. It was ice cold now. She turned to look at David, but caught Jacob's eyes instead. His gaze pierced into her, sharp, heavy, and laced with concern. Or suspicion. She couldn't tell. It was too intense. She couldn't meet it. She felt like a small insect under a magnifying glass. She didn't want to know what he was thinking. She was sure she wouldn't like it. But Vasper noticed it. He saw Jacob staring at her. And just like that, his attention snapped to Jacob. His eyes darkened. His lips curled into a threatening snarl. Then came a sound, a hiss. Low and venomous, like a serpent about to strike. The 5 guardians immediately tensed. Jacob's body suddenly ignited in a blue flame as he locked eyes with Vasper, ready to challenge him. But Lewis was faster. With a sharp wave of his hand, he activated his telekinesis and suspended Jacob midair. The blue flames around him vanished, snuffed out in an instant. Jacob was immobilized, frozen. Meanwhile, she sat trembling. Terrified. So scared she nearly wet herself. Vasper's body was trembling too, but from rage. His muscles tensed like steel cables under his skin. The veins in his arms and neck bulged with fury. She looked up at him, pleading with her eyes. "Stop." He held her gaze, and for a moment, he calmed. Slightly. The fury in his eyes dimmed just a little. But the room remained electric with danger. The tension didn't ease. If anything, it climbed higher. Especially when David stood from his seat and walked slowly toward the monitor. Something was coming. And she had the terrible feeling. This was only the beginning. David's arms were crossed tightly over his chest, the muscles in his forearms twitching with restrained fury. "Vasper, you said you'd fix this mess. Then why the hell did your best friend hold a press conference?" David's voice thundered through the massive, soundproofed room like a violent clap of thunder. Her whole body jumped, trembling uncontrollably. Her ears rang. She had never seen David this furious. There was no physical fight taking place, yet the energy felt like an explosion had gone off. Vasper shot up from his seat instantly, his towering 6 feet 5 inches frame casting a long shadow over the polished marble floor. He took one aggressive step toward David, jaw clenched, eyes blazing. But she moved instinctively. Tears poured down her cheeks as she grabbed his arm, sobbing, her body shaking uncontrollably. "No, please," she whispered between sobs, voice trembling. She was crying so hard she could barely see, barely breathe. Vasper halted, his chest heaving, teeth gritted so tightly it looked painful. Everyone else in the room had stood up, tense and alert. Only Marco remained seated, his expression unreadable, calm despite the raging storm inside the room. He stared directly at Vasper, then at her, his demeanor oddly relaxed, almost cold. The rest had already flanked David, ready for anything. Louis, however, had his piercing gaze fixed on Jacob. She followed his line of sight and gasped. Thick veins had bulged out along Jacob's neck, his power visibly surging beneath his skin as he tried to resist the telekinetic grip Louis had clamped down on him. But Louis was struggling too, his own veins pulsing in defiance, sweat forming on his temple as they both locked wills. Vasper's arm wrapped around her tightly, a protective and possessive embrace. "I'm sorry," he muttered through clenched teeth, but his eyes were blazing red with fury, a quiet inferno that looked ready to consume the room. Gabriel suddenly stepped toward David and smacked him hard on the shoulder. "Breathe, David," he said sharply. David turned to face the wall, taking one long, deep breath through his nose and exhaling through his mouth, trying to regain control. "I'm sure this news has already spread like wildfire across the inner world," David said, his tone grave. "By tomorrow morning, I'll be summoned to give a full report." "And how exactly do you expect me to defend your actions, Vasper? What the hell do you want me to say? That all of this chaos, this risk of our world being exposed to the public, is because of a fallout between two best friends? Over a woman?" Each word from David hit like a hammer, heavy, deliberate, sharp. But there was a bitter sarcasm to his voice, the corners of his lips twitching as if mocking his own frustration, while his eyes burned with rage. The guardians grimaced, their jaws clenched tightly as they looked between David and Vasper. Meanwhile, she couldn't stop crying. Silent tears streamed down her cheeks. Her throat felt tight, like she couldn't breathe. Her body was trembling. She felt like her knees would collapse if not for Vasper's firm hold on her. That's when she noticed Marco, who had finally stood. Without a word, he slid a box of tissues toward her across the smooth table. She picked it up with shaky hands and tried to wipe her face, though her hands trembled so badly the tissue barely stayed between her fingers. She gripped Vasper's arm tightly, it was swollen with protruding veins from his fury, and she held on like she was drowning. Slowly, Vasper helped her sit back down on the plush chair, but she didn't release his arm. She clung to him tightly as if letting go would shatter her. She could feel it, Vasper was barely restraining himself. His rage was like a volcano just waiting for one more spark to erupt. The veins on his forearms, on his neck, bulged ominously. His jaw was locked so tight she feared his teeth might crack. Vasper understood David. Deep down, he knew David was right. But that didn't stop him from being infuriated, especially after David had ruined the moments of their honeymoon. Not to mention, they'd been in the middle of making love when David had called. That alone had set off his temper. Suddenly, she saw Marco move toward the water dispenser in the far corner. The soft hum of the machine and the trickle of water were the only sounds in the room besides their strained breathing. Marco returned, holding a glass of water. He handed it to her silently. She took it with both hands, but her fingers were trembling so badly she nearly dropped it. "Thanks, Marco," she whispered, her voice shaking as much as the glass she held. She lifted it slowly to her lips and drank, only managing a few sips before she set it back down on the table. Her hand released it just in time, the empty glass tipped but didn't spill. Everyone's eyes flicked toward it instinctively, as if waiting for one more sign of shattering. She couldn't stop trembling. Even while sitting, her legs trembled uncontrollably beneath her. "God, help me," she mumbled. If she could skip these hours, erase this entire moment, she would. Then came another explosion. "Jacob, don't fight back anymore. You're just adding fuel to this fire." Louis barked, struggling to maintain control over his telekinetic hold. Jacob was still resisting, his body vibrating with contained power, his glare fixed on Vasper. David exhaled slowly, visibly trying to calm himself, though his voice was still tight with authority. "Tonight, you'll all go after Daimon. At dawn I'll be leaving for the inner world," he added. "They're surely waiting for my report. I don't want any of you making things worse." His tone became sharper, no longer a request, but a direct order. "Find out where Daimon is hiding that video. Locate the witnesses at the scene. Pay them off, do whatever it takes to shut them up." His voice was low, dangerously cold, yet trying to remain composed. "I already did all of that," Vasper snapped, his voice guttural with restrained fury. His teeth ground together audibly. But that bastard still went ahead with the press conference. He sat back down with a heavy thud and pulled her into him, his large arms folding her tightly against his torso. "I have no choice now but to silence him, permanently." She had no choice but to obey him. Maybe this was the best course of action in a situation like this. At least it would keep him from standing up to confront David. Slowly, she sat down on Vasper's lap, feeling the solid strength of his thighs beneath her. Her trembling hands reached around his neck as she leaned in, pressing her cheek against the warmth of his skin. Her eyes fluttered closed just as his arms wrapped tightly around her waist, pulling her closer. His chest rose and fell deeply as he buried his lips in her hair, kissing it gently. "Just relax, don't worry," he whispered against her scalp, his breath hot and soothing. David let out a short, strange laugh, almost maniacal, as he stared at Vasper. She opened her eyes and glanced toward him. And for a fleeting second, David's eyes locked on hers. Then Vasper leaned back into the chair, completely ignoring David's laughter. He lifted both his boots and rested them on a nearby chair, spreading out comfortably with her still on his lap. His body slouched in calculated arrogance, and his arms held her close as he let his head fall back, his smirk twisting into something dark and taunting. Vasper's eyes glinted with challenge, his stare piercing through David like a provocation. The 5 guardians watched tensely, all eyes now glued on the 2 powerful men. But she couldn't tear her gaze away from Vasper. He looked down at her with a devilish smile before leaning in and kissing her softly on the lips. Then his eyes shifted back to David, lips curled, daring him to speak again. David finally stopped laughing. He slipped his hands into the pockets of his trouser, but his face grew more sinister. There was nothing calming about his looks. Not even his sharp handsomeness could soften it. He resembled a lion ready to pounce, just waiting for the right moment to attack. Thank God she was sitting on Vasper's lap. His arms stayed firmly around her, and while his embrace helped ease the trembling in her limbs, the thunder in her chest refused to quiet. She could feel the storm of what might happen. "Really, Vasper? That's your plan?" David's voice was calm now, too calm. "You think no one will suspect you? Everyone around him knows you're Daimon's only real rival at this moment." Vasper's tone was casual, but the weight of it echoed from deep within his chest. Daimon never mentioned any names in the press conference, David. She could feel the rumble of Vasper's voice vibrating through her spine, down to the pit of her stomach. It was strange, comforting. She leaned further into his chest and shut her eyes. It was better to just listen. Better to avoid seeing the rage and chaos written on their faces, the threat of violence in every breath. "But Daimon's parents know what's going on," David suddenly exploded. "Don't be an idiot, Vasper." The blast of his voice hit her like a whip. She jolted, her whole body recoiling instinctively. Vasper moved, his entire body tense, ready to rise, but she panicked, clung to him desperately. "Vasper. David. Can't you just talk like normal people?" She screamed, tears pouring from her eyes as she threw her arms around Vasper's neck to stop him from standing. She gripped the armrest of the chair with one hand, holding him down as best as she could, while the other clung tightly to his throat. Please. You don't have to yell, David. Can you not scream at my husband? You called us here. And now you're screaming at us. Her voice cracked, trembling as she sobbed. Silence. It was as if her scream had cast a spell. Everyone froze. Stone-faced. Vasper's blazing eyes blinked. His jaw dropped slightly in disbelief, but only for a moment. Then he looked at her, truly looked at her, and crushed her to his chest, kissing her face, her lips, her forehead, all in a rush. Baby, relax. I don't want you caught in this mess. I'm fine. This is just how we talk. Always has been. He murmured, voice rough but soothing. She stared at him, chest heaving. The guardian's faces. Unreadable. Serious, concerned. Maybe even afraid, but there was no clear emotion, only shadows. David turned away, running his hand over his face. His posture crumbled under the weight of something heavy. I should have never let you fall that deep for him, Shanti, he said suddenly, turning around to face her. His expression was filled with regret. It struck her like lightning. Her mouth dropped open. I never imagined it would end like this. But the longer this goes on, the more pain you'll suffer. He added with a bitter edge. Don't ever say that in front of me, David, Vasper growled before she could even respond. His body trembled with fury. His eyes. Blazing fire. Then tension exploded when Jacob broke free from Lewis's telekinetic hold. The air cracked. Gabriel launched himself at Jacob with lightning speed and drove his fist straight into his face. Blood splattered from Jacob's nose as his head snapped back. Lewis immediately re-established his telekinetic grip, freezing Jacob in place once more. Sorry, bro. Gabriel said, flexing his sore knuckles, inspecting them. But we don't need another lion in this room. Two's enough. You can take your turn later. He looked toward Vasper, concern flickering behind his stern expression. But Vasper didn't even glance at him. We'll step out, Lewis said, and without another word, he exited the room with Jacob levitating beside him. Unconscious or too stunned to resist. Everyone watched them leave in silence before turning back to David and her. I don't want to get involved in your mess with Samara, David said flatly. But remember, your decision to kick her out of Shanta's company pushed her to flee to Japan. You acted on your own. You poured a massive amount of money into her vineyard company without the right process. That's why she's so furious. You disrespected her rights as a top investor. Her eyes whipped to Vasper. You did that? She asked, heart pounding. He looked at her without flinching. Yes. I paid off your legal counsel and everyone who could remove her from the vineyard. His voice was proud. Unapologetic. His chin held high. When you force out a top investor from a prestigious company like Vineyard without due process, the consequences are explosive. It destroys investor trust. It rattles board members. It invites lawsuits, reputational damage, and possibly opens the door to regulators. And for someone like Samara, whose name holds weight, it was not just a removal. It was war. She closed her eyes and leaned back against Vasper's chest. She didn't want to think about it anymore. What he did wasn't right. But somehow, she still felt like a thorn had been pulled from her side. Samara was finally gone from her vineyard. Don't worry, Vasper whispered, kissing her hair again. I'll take care of everything. I'll make sure Samara stays quiet. Just ignore the news and it'll die on its own. And that was true. In politics and power plays, if a story isn't fed, it loses air. No response, no attention, it fizzles. The public loses interest. Rumors without fuel burn out. From now on, Shanti, prepare yourself. David's voice cut the air once more, his tone darkening like a warning bell. King Elander has already set your husband's fate. And only destiny will decide who among us survives. Him or all the guardians. His words were a blade, and she hated how sharp they sounded. She didn't want to fight David. Not him. But Vasper only chuckled at the threat. Of course he already knew. I'll be waiting, David. Vasper replied coolly. Don't worry. I'll give you one hell of a fight. All the anger you've got bottled up. I'll give you a chance to let it all out. But for now, I don't have time to waste here. I thought this meeting was urgent. Just like that. Vasper stood up, swiftly, powerfully, taking her entire weight along with him as if she weighed nothing in his arms. She instinctively tried to stand on her own. But he refused. His arms tightened around her, locking her in his protective embrace, and she had no choice but to cling to him, her arms circling his neck for support. The guardians remained utterly silent, unmoving, their eyes fixed on both Vasper and her. There was something in their expressions, a blend of respect, restraint, and curiosity, as if they were witnessing a sacred moment between their king and his woman. Then suddenly, a sharp sound broke the heavy stillness. Marco's cell phone rang from his pocket. Her eyes darted toward him in confusion. They're allowed to carry phones now? The thought struck her like a ripple of disbelief. She never understood why cell phones were forbidden in the first place. Apart from the landlines. Vasper told her not to carry one either, even if he could allow it. They said it was for security, to avoid being tracked or followed. But deep down, she knew there had to be a darker, more complex reason behind it. Still, she never pressed for answers. But now, Marco had one? She watched closely as he pulled the phone from his pocket and placed it to his ear. He turned away slightly, his voice dropping to a soft, private tone. Even the other guardians were now watching him with interest, their focus shifting, brows subtly raised in curiosity. Sweetheart, don't worry. I'll be home tomorrow. I'm at David's house right now. Marco said gently into the phone, clearly speaking to Jasmine. Justin chuckled, glancing at Marco, then flashed a mocking deadpan signal toward David. The brothers exchanged glances, shaking their heads with amused disbelief. Sweetheart, don't worry. If I get in contact with Shanti, I'll make sure she calls you, all right? Marco added, turning to face her now, as if wanting her to hear Jasmine's message. He was being thoughtful, making sure her concern reached her. Vasper also looked at her. She could see it in his eyes. He wanted her to talk to her best friend. But she hesitated. How could she? The last time Jasmine and her saw each other, Jake was still alive. He was her husband. Now, it's Vasper. Jake had just died, and she hadn't even told Jasmine. How could she explain the mess that was her life? How could she face her when she hadn't even made sense of it herself? Marco's voice was warm, steady. Sweetheart, don't worry. She'll get the message. Don't cry like that. It's not good for our baby, all right? I'm sure Shanti is in good hands with Vasper. Okay? Marco's soothing words made it clear Jasmine was crying. She was emotional. Hearing about Samara must have broken her. That knowledge struck a nerve in her, a tremor that spread to her chest. Tears welled up. She buried her face deep against Vasper's chest and clenched the fabric of his collar in her fists. She held on so tight, desperate not to make a sound, afraid Jasmine might hear her sobs on the other end of the line. She was holding it all in, shame, guilt, pain. Justin and Gabriel both sighed heavily and quietly stepped out of the room, giving space. Meanwhile, Marco kept replying softly into his phone. Okay, sweetheart. Bye. Take care of yourself and don't be sad, all right? I'll be home tomorrow. I love you. And with that, he ended the call, the gentle beep of the phone echoing faintly. He exhaled a deep breath, rubbing his face. She's really worried about you, Marco said, shaking his head slightly. There's not a day she doesn't mention your name to me. He walked to the water dispenser, grabbed a cup, and took a long drink. If you're ready to talk to her, call her. Let her hear your voice. It might ease her heart even a little. Ever since Jake died, she keeps wondering how you are, what's happening to you. You're all she considers family, Shanti. Those words shattered her. She broke. She cried harder, her body trembling in Vasper's arms. He wrapped her tighter in his embrace, not saying a word, just holding her together while she was falling apart. We wanted to visit her. But we didn't get the chance. Maybe in the next few days. Vasper spoke up quietly. Your friend will understand, Shanti, Marco added gently. Even if she doesn't like Vasper for you, she loves you. She'll understand your heart. And she'll be happy to see you again. His words soothed the storm inside her. Her throat was tight, but she managed a whispered, "Thank you, Marco." She felt the soft, cool touch of tissue dabbing her cheek, Vasper gently wiping away her tears. That's enough. Let's go home, he said with finality, turning to David with a glare. Next time, David, don't interrupt our honeymoon like that. You called just when I was about to go in. Who wouldn't be pissed off? His words struck like lightning. Her eyes widened. Her mouth fell open. She smacked him lightly on the cheek, mortified. Vasper. She couldn't look at David, she wanted to vanish, melt, disappear from sheer embarrassment. Her face burned red, and she burrowed even deeper against Vasper's chest, hiding from the world. Sorry. I didn't know. She heard David mumble, awkward and apologetic. But Vasper only let out a quiet snarl, refusing to engage further. She didn't even dare look at the others, she didn't want to know what their faces looked like. She was too humiliated. She just wished the ground would swallow her whole. Then suddenly, she felt the familiar shift, the air crackled around them, the faint pulse of energy signaling the activation of Vasper's teleportation power. It was already so familiar to her body. Before the light fully consumed them, she scrambled, trying to climb down from his body. Put me down, Vasper. But he didn't listen. He lowered her gently, their eyes locking. Intense. Heated. Why did you have to say that to David? That was so embarrassing. She cried out, face flushed, tears still fresh in her eyes. Sorry. I did that on purpose so he'd feel guilty. I want him to know how pissed I am. He was a disturbance. Vasper replied, his voice serious, though not angry. She turned to head for the bedroom, needing to cool off, but he caught her by the wrist and stopped her. His hand slid around her waist, then down to her hips. No. Let's go to the healing bath. Look at you. You can't even walk properly, he said, his tone gentler now, eyes scanning her body with an amused glint. He was smiling again, that mischievous smile. Come on, it'll help, he added, whispering low, like a tempting sin in the dark. Stop that, Vasper. We have too many problems right now. She protested weakly, even as she began undressing. But he wasn't listening. He just watched her. Watched every inch of bare skin she revealed, his eyes darkening, heated, until nothing was left on her. And then, he moved. In one fluid motion, he grabbed her, pulled her against him, and wrapped his arms around her. His kiss came fast and deep, fervent. She froze, his embrace too tight, his body radiating heat that overwhelmed her. His lips devoured hers with such hunger she could barely breathe, his need pressing into every inch of her. And she couldn't move. Couldn't speak. Only feel.